Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put
Not good. Believe me, not good.
What's up, dissidents? Welcome, one and all. A pleasant good morning, everybody. Thank you all very much for being here. Lovely crowd filing in 9 a.m. on Friday, September 15th. 212 strong in the YouTube chat. 60 filing in over on Rumble. Russell Dobular is in the YouTube chat right now. What's up, my friends? Hope you're enjoying vacation. Don't pay too much attention to this show. Take in the sights around you, because I do have a great friend of ours who is joining us to guest host this morning. She will be with us part of the way, not the whole time. I'll take the second half of the show solo because we have a lot to talk about. But I do want to thank very much our friend for making some time for us this morning. She is the host of Bitch on the Indie News Network and the more benignly titled but just as potent Misty Winston show on TNT Radio. Our great pal, Misty Winston. Misty, thanks so much for being here. Great to see you again.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me. And shout out to Russ for taking vacation so I could join you today. Appreciate you, my friend.
Beautiful. Indeed. Well, I have to start out with an apology because I was supposed to be on your radio show
you're fine.
on Monday, September 11th, but I forgot because it was September 11th, and I always forget September 11th. It's just a thing that happens. So I just slipped my mind. I told myself, don't book anything on September 11th because you always forget September 11th. But I did, and it was my mistake. No, as most of you guys know in the audience, my son Sawyer had a health scare this week where he was admitted to the hospital Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and so that's why I could not make it. But I was looking forward to
you don't owe me an
joining
apology for that, my friend. Kids get sick. It happens. We had no problem filling it. It's all good. We'll get you rescheduled.
Well, yeah. The thing is, I really wanted to share some of my 9/11 conspiracy theories with you, so I have a request that you book me for 9/11 next year. Okay. I want to be booked on that show.
Done.
I know it's early in advance, but I would like to be on next year's September 11th show. So that we could talk, because I was looking forward to it. But yeah, thanks so much for being here. We have a lot to cover here because I have been off for the past 4 or 5 days, and so a lot has happened that we're going to be catching up on. But a lot happens overnight. At least something happened overnight that we're going to be talking about right now. So last night, the United Auto Workers went on strike, kind of. And it was sort of anticlimactic given all the really sort of militant rhetoric coming out of UAW President Shawn Fain. But here he was, pardon me, on a YouTube live stream talking about the plan for the strike, how this is going to be different from past strikes. This is going to be a stand-up strike. So let's hear what he means by that.
Strike begins with all of our locals. The stand-up strike begins with all of our locals, from parts distribution centers to assembly plants, maintaining a constant strike readiness. It's really important that we're clear on this point. We will not strike all of our facilities at once.
What?
We will strike all three companies, a historic first, initially at a limited number of targeted locations that we will be announcing. Then, based on what's happening in bargaining, we're going to announce more locals that are going to be called to stand up and strike. These locals will join those that are already on strike so that our strike at each company will continue to grow over time. And again, I want to be clear. Our goal is not to strike. Our goal is to reach a fair agreement. But if the companies continue to bargain in bad faith, or continue to stall, or continue to give us insulting offers, then our strike's going to continue to grow. At the beginning, a select few are going to strike, and then as needed, more are going to join in. We're going to hit where we need to hit, and when we need to hit, we're going to hit to move mountains. If your local is not named, then you are not yet on strike. We will communicate.
Well, I don't understand
What
why.
is this?
How is this better than striking all at once? I mean, I'm not a labor organizer. I have a lot of respect for this guy. He's been very good so far, but this is a true head scratcher to me. And Misty, one of the reasons I really wanted to have you on for this, because I know you only have an hour, is because you are really the drill sergeant in this space, where like whenever people start getting hopeful about a leader, whether it's a political leader or a labor leader or just a movement leader in general, you're always one of the first ones out there to say, no, this is wrong. This guy or gal is an asshole. And then everybody comes at you, oh, why you got to be so negative, right? Why can't you just let us have a moment of optimism? But then you're always proven right in the end. So,
usually, maybe not always, but usually, yeah.
I mean, I can't think of a time you've been wrong. Maybe you have, but not that I know of.
I can't think of one either.
There you go. So what's your take on this? I mean, I want to get your thoughts, because you're always ahead of the curve on this.
I mean,
kind of
okay,
stuff.
To be fair, I am also not a labor organizer. I also don't generally cover a lot of labor stuff. So I hate to, criticize too harshly, because I don't know the ins and outs of this as much as this, obviously this guy does, but this seems real weak sauce. You know what I mean? This obviously should, in my opinion, why do these little targeted strikes? Why not just go full force, straight at them, hit them hard, and get what you want? I mean, it seems really weak-willed to go in very piecemeal, very mealy-mouthed, we're going to do, and it's not even really all that strategic. It looks like the places that they're striking initially. So it seems, to me, it just seems like very counterproductive. I mean, why wouldn't you just go full force, just get it all done? The longer you drag this out, the harder it is for everybody. So just go in all the way and hit them where it hurts. And to me, it just seems like a real waste of time, but that's just my opinion.
Well, it makes no sense to me on a number of levels. Number one, you allow the big three automakers to continue production, which the whole point of a strike is to stop that, number one. Number two, it seems to me to be anti-solidarity, because now you have some workers who are on strike and some workers who are now forced to work without a contract because the negotiation period expired last night. I'm sorry, the contract expired last night. So now you have people working without a contract. Yeah. Now they're putting up videos saying, well, you're working without a contract, but you're still protected by a lot of the terms of the contract, which means that some of the workers who are now working under this temporary sort of amorphous contract, what, are they going to end up better off than the striking workers? Because are they going to get paid more than whatever the strike pay is, depending on how long the strike goes on? You're dividing the workforce. The whole point of a strike is solidarity among the ranks. So everybody's in the same boat. We are either all working or we're all striking. I don't understand what the strategy is here, and this was a live stream. Now, Sean Fain's been very good so far, and so these live streams have gotten very, very popular. And this was one of the last live streams in the run-up to the strike action. So this had a lot of views, and the chat was going crazy, and you could see a noticeable turn in the chat as soon as he said, by the way, we're not all striking at once. So I have some of the chat, but I want to play this first. This is very, very awkward, so we're going to talk through it because there's a lot of silence. So he goes to a sort of Q&A period.
I mean, unfortunately, there are literally thousands of comments right now, but...
Yeah, people are mad.
Look how long he spends looking for a positive comment.
Yeah.
He's watching the chat feed right now, thinking, oh, shit, did I just blow it?
Yeah.
They're revolting. they're pissed. This
It
goes
makes
on
no
for 30
sense.
seconds of dead silence. He's sitting on the air trying to find something to respond to that's going to make him look good because people are very upset. I mean, this guy built them up to think that this was going to be the most significant labor action in a half a century, and now he's dripping it out slowly for...
I'm just glancing through here. I see some people saying
Here
we
we
should
go.
all go out at once, and I understand that, and that's still an option that we have. But
What do you mean?
It's
as I
not
said,
an
It's not
option.
an
This
option.
isn't
They're-
just a
you-
decision
they-
made on a-
okay, it's not an option. It's in motion now. The
Yeah.
strike has started now. We have some writing on this, but let me just show, because I'll just show you a little bit of what he was looking at. I took some screenshots here. This is from the live chat as he announced that this was going to be a quote-unquote stand-up strike. What kind of protection are you going to have in place of members that aren't on strike if we do targeted strikes? What happens to us working without a contract? Shake my head. No targeted strike. Fudge. Damn. Strike. Come on. Oh, my God. No. Go big or go home. Come on, man. Huh? Bad idea. This went on. I mean, I'm just giving you a small sample.
Yeah.
But this is just a small taste of what he was looking at for those 35 seconds when he turned it over to the chat. So let's hear the rest of what he has to say about this.
this is a decision made by a lot of people on this team and in our leadership that have really looked at all the options and try to figure out the best way to strategically make this happen.
This sounds a little bit like, we have to vote for Nancy Pelosi for Speaker in the House because it's the most strategic. I mean, it does reek of that. Am I wrong?
Yeah, no, it does. It just seems very weak-willed. I think the mistake here, and again, not a labor organizer, don't come for me. I'm not trying to pretend as if I'm an expert here, but to me, as an outsider looking in objectively, you built this up as if it's going to be this very significant labor strike, and then you do this. This just shows weakness. You have now opened the gates. You know what I mean? You've now shown that kind of crack in the armor, and you have completely weakened your starting position, in my opinion. I mean, this just looks very weak, very weak. And you're right. It does divide the workforce. It does divide. This limits solidarity. No question about it.
Right, because now you have some people striking. Some people are working under these vague contractual terms because the contract is expired. They hired some lawyer to make some video that we can't play because it's got copyrighted music, so I don't want to take a chance and get the stream pulled. But it looked like a DNC commercial, this is my fight. So, like with the him saying, hey, don't worry. If you're working without a contract, here's how to work without a contract, right?
Yeah.
And the graphics and all this shit. And it's just like, oh, this just went to shit so fast. It's so disheartening because this looked very promising. And look, I still wish UAW all the best. I hope he knows what he's doing. He's got more experience than me.
For sure.
Like I said, not only am I not an expert in this, I didn't have time to become an expert in this because this fucking Barney Rubble with a fucking, I mean, he fucking sprung this on us at the last second.
Yeah.
At the last second. He pulls it out. It says, okay, now we're going to, now we're going to strike what? The 3 plants at first?
Yeah. It's just not, to me, it's just not a good look. And it was very quick. It seemed as if they were going to go in this full force and then to back out of it in this way and do this kind of piecemeal sort of, we're going to do 3. It doesn't make any sense to me. And it's really disheartening because again, like you, I really hope that they're successful. I mean, I hope this guy's some evil genius and he's got this all under control and they're going to pull it out and it's going to be fine. I really, really, really hope that that's the case. I don't think so, though.
Yeah, by the way, the video's not paused. The video is playing. He's just not saying anything because he's reading the chat. I didn't pause it. Pause it. Yeah.
I see a lot of good comments on here.
A lot of good comments
about
on
walking
here.
off midnight.
Oh, my God. All right, so here's what happened. So here's how this ended up playing out because, if you notice in the thumbnail, I put UAW strike ? Because we prepped these the night before and news broke at midnight because that's when the contract expired. So CNN puts out this morning, UAW workers launch unprecedented strike against the big 3 automakers. Workers on Friday walked out of 3 plants. So it's 3 plants, one each from the big 3 automakers in Missouri, Michigan, and Ohio. Picketers were met with cheers from sign-waving union members. The UAW referred to its targeted strike of 3 plants as a stand-up strike, which it called a strategic, quote, new approach to walking off the job. As time goes on, more locals may be called on to stand up and join the strike, the union told members. this gives us maximum leverage and maximum flexibility in the fight to win a fair contract at each of the big three automakers. Again, explain to me how that's not gaslighting.
Yeah.
How does keeping the plants open and keeping the automakers profitable, how does that give you maximum leverage? Like, there's just no way. Like, I'd be very surprised if there's a way to make that make sense.
No, it doesn't make any sense. That this gives you no leverage. In fact, it does the opposite, in my opinion, and it doesn't make any sense whatsoever to go out weak like this. Again, I'm a big fan of just going all out, hit them in the face, punch them right in the face from jump. Don't show any weakness. And to me, this is a major sign of weakness, and it's going to create further weakness because it's going to divide that solidarity between the workers. And that's just not a good plan. Doesn't make any sense. No sense.
No, absolutely not. The UAW strikes began at GM's Wentzville, Missouri, which has 3,600 UAW members on its staff. Ford's Michigan truck plant in Wayne, Michigan, which will have 3,300 strikes, and Stellantis' Toledo Assembly Complex in Ohio, where 5,800 will be on strike. So in all, fewer than 13,000 of the UAW's 145,000 members walked off the job. So fewer than 10% of their workforce is actually on strike. The strike, while unprecedented, is less extensive than had been expected only 2 days ago, when it appeared that all 145,000 UAW members at the three companies could be hitting the picket lines. That would have been the nation's largest strike of active workers in 25 years.
That's what I was pumped for. Let's go.
That's what we were all pumped for. That's what he had everybody pumped for. And when did they come up with this change of plans? 2 days ago? 2 days ago? I mean, it's kind of scummy. I hate to say, because he seems like a decent guy, but it's kind of scummy to lead people along for months and months and months, saying, okay, on September 14th, we all walk out. And then 48 hours in advance, you change it. Actually,
Just
fewer
kidding.
than 10% of us are walking out.
Yeah.
I mean, just unbelievable.
Yeah. It's just
Just
not
a
a good look.
heartbreaker.
It looks as it looks
Another
disorganized. It looks honestly as if somebody, and I hate to say it, but somebody got to him. You know what I mean? It looks like somebody got to him. And I don't know if that's the case. I don't mean to make that implication, but I don't know why. It doesn't make any sense to me why you would make this quick shift, like you said, 48 hours before this thing is supposed to pop off. Why you would suddenly change your strategy after you've been hyping this thing for months. This is and the biggest labor strike we've seen in ages. Let's go. Like, people are ready for that. And it sucks that this is where they're at right now. Less than 10%. Come on. Really?
Well, yes. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. You're fine. Go.
He spoke to Joe Biden in July. We know that they met.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Biden recently said to a reporter during his Philadelphia Labor Day rally that he didn't expect the strike would happen. Right here, JR says Biden administration got it in his ear. Could be. And this is an interesting comment. J7 Politics, Kramer called this guy a paper tiger. Talk about Jim Kramer, the functioning alcoholic CNBC financial host. He put that clip surfaced on Twitter last night. I was planning on using that clip today to do a pro Sean Fain segment about how, in shambles he has the financial press and all these villains who we've all been railing against for so long. I was prepared to do a celebratory segment on the UAW strike, and then I see this come across at the last second. Yeah. And so, maybe he is a paper tiger. Maybe they know something. But either way, this just absolutely makes no sense. Zayden said Biden called him. It's in the news. I'll have to look into that. Did that just break? Because I didn't see anything about that.
I haven't seen that either, but that wouldn't surprise me. I mean, listen, we've already seen that happen with the railroad strike where Biden crushed that. We know that the Biden administration has been pressuring both sides of this situation to try to get it to come to a resolution. So it would not surprise. And we all know that Biden is not on the side of the unions, clearly. So I'm sure that pressure was very heavy-handed for one of those sides. And so it wouldn't surprise me. Again, I like this guy. I did anyway. He seemed as if he was doing a really great job. And so it sucks to have to think that maybe he sold out in the workforce here, but it's difficult to see how that couldn't be the case, and not to say that, I mean, listen, that's an extreme amount of pressure to be under. So, I mean, it just sucks. It's really depressing. I was really looking forward to this potentially being something, because I really genuinely think that people are ready for this kind of a strike. They're ready for this kind of mass uprising of workers. And so to see it fall apart last second just sucks. It's terrible.
Yeah, and you can really see what a letdown it is that even Misty had hope for this guy.
Right.
And Misty never has hope for
I don't have
anybody.
hope for most people.
And even she was pumped for this.
To be fair, though, again, I don't cover labor stuff a lot, so I haven't been following it super closely, and I was just kind of on the periphery like, oh, maybe this will be cool.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I was a little hesitant to opine on this because I have to assume he knows more than I do. But on the other hand, there's just no way to make it make sense. There's just no way to make it make sense that 145,000 striking workers gives you less leverage than 13,000 striking workers. That just seems like a total gaslight job.
Yeah. I don't like being gaslit either.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's happened to us a lot these past number of years.
Forever.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. Folks, Misty has an hour, so we're going to go through these segments. I will take super chats. Our first super chat break will be after 10 a.m. when Misty has to leave.
But I have to go to the gym.
That's all right. Health first. Got to put your health first.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you end up like me.
I couldn't justify missing squat day. I love squats.
Cool. But yeah, I will catch up on super chats in a half an hour, so don't worry. We will get to all of them. And thank you very much for your generosity. Your donations and support are what make these morning shows possible. That's why I am not in the car right now delivering food. I am here doing the show.
Support independent media, please. Please.
Okay, so Russell says, this is for Keaton and Misty. The automaker stocks have been up ever since he took this tack. Well, there you go. There you go. That makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you, Russell. Doing work from Italy. Relevant indeed. Thank you, Jake, for pointing that out. All right, let's do a somewhat lighter segment here. This is a quick one, folks, but a fun one. Woody Harrelson was on a panel at the Venice Film Festival, and he was asked about the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and he gave a very, very clever answer. So let's take a look.
Who just thinks it's abominable when the kind of guy who just thinks it's abominable when a superpower with all this military might, with no provocation, attacks just unprovoked, attacks a country that is, Iraq, I'm sorry, Korea, no, sorry, Ukraine. Terrible. Yeah, I lost my way there.
The old switcheroo, is looking like a real lib answer, and you're thinking that doesn't make sense for a guy like Woody Harrelson. But the libs would call that whataboutism. Yeah. And I always said it's not about whataboutism; it's about the kind of world you want to live in. So he rattles off a series of countries that we have invaded or we have interfered in, with no moral or political justification whatsoever. And the question is, and I said this from the second the war started, if you want to hold Putin to account for the invasion of Ukraine, then what you're asking for is a world in which we are held responsible for all of our crimes. And that's a world that none of these libs can begin to imagine, because it's a world in which the United States does not exist in anything resembling its current form.
No.
And so that was probably the most high profile articulation of that argument I've seen, albeit, sarcastically done.
I like the sarcasm though. Bring that shit on.
Yeah.
And it's I love that because it takes a lot of balls, because he is in Hollywood, and Hollywood is very liberal. It is very shitlity. And so it takes a lot of balls for him to come out and say something like that. And I mean, listen, he gave 3 quick examples, I think, of countries. That list goes on and on and on and on. And I've been saying it since the start of the whole Ukraine, Russia nonsense. People they want to convict or try Putin for his war crimes. Dude, the entirety of what Putin has done in the situation in Ukraine since it started is a Tuesday for the United States of America.
Mm-hmm.
It is the height of hypocrisy to finger wag at Putin over his war crimes, which of course there are no doubt war crimes being committed. Absolutely. War is a war crime, basically. So of course there are war crimes being committed, but to finger wag as an American, you need to take all of the seats. You need to shut up and you need to hold your own accountable. Clean your own house first. There is absolutely nothing that Vladimir Putin has done that even comes close to comparing to, any given day of Joe Biden's administration. How many countries are we currently illegally occupying? How many military bases do we have across the globe? How many black sites are we operating? It just doesn't even come close. And so that whole, the American exceptionalism that it requires to think that you have the moral superiority over literally anyone is endlessly fascinating to me.
Yeah, and I would love to be a fly on the wall next time Woody Harrelson and Sean Penn meet up, because as I understand, they are friends. And so,
are they?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've seen them. Like Bill Maher used to do those New Year's Eve gigs in Hawaii, and he would always tweet out photos. And I'm pretty sure Sean Penn and Woody Harrelson were always in those photos with him.
Wow.
And Sean Penn, I mean, just talk about an absolute fall from, like, he was one of the only people in Hollywood speaking out against the Iraq war, and yet he has become the most obnoxious militant hawk for this. And you're right, all of Hollywood has, and it is a risk to go out there and talk like that. Especially, at the Venice Film Festival, it's a very sort of swanky event with a lot of people who, I mean, that really is a liberal hive mind out there. And so, good on him. Good on him.
And by the way, I don't even know who it was, but I saw somebody in the chat say Putin's not a good guy. At no point did I say that he was. Can we stop with that nonsense? I don't think Putin's I don't like any world leaders. None of that. You can't reach that level of power without being kind of a psychopath. And I'm not saying Putin's a good guy. Never once did I say that. There is absolutely no question, though, that we are far worse. It's not even the same ballpark, y'all. You can't even make the comparison. And people always do that. Anytime you try to call attention to the fact that the United States is by far the world's biggest bully. Oh, but Putin what?
Well, that's always the line. That's always the line. If you were against the Iraq war, they said you supported Saddam Hussein, right? If you were against the Vietnam War, they said it was because you sympathize with the, communists, right? I mean, that's always the tack that they take, right? Is that they make you an enemy if you question the military operations or the military commitments of the U.S. and in this case, the West more broadly. So yeah, absolutely. All right, we got about 20 minutes left with you, Misty, and I have been chomping at the bit to do this story since Sunday because my kids started to get sick on Sunday, and so we bumped our Sunday show up from the evening to the afternoon, thinking in case his fever spiked overnight, I would just be kind of available. But then as soon as we signed off on our Sunday show, so this would have been almost a week ago, it was announced that the Cornel West campaign hired Peter Daou as its campaign manager. Cornel tweets out, "I'm so very blessed to have my dear brother Peter Daou as my campaign manager. I welcome him to our campaign and movement. We will work together for truth and justice." Here's the announcement they put out. We don't have to read the whole thing here. Presidential candidate Cornel West today welcomed Peter Daou to his presidential campaign in the role of campaign manager. A respected activist, advisor, writer, and musician, Daou has more than 20 years of national political experience and was described by the New York Times as one of the most prominent political bloggers in the nation. He has advised major progressive organizations and has held senior positions in several Democratic presidential campaigns. Daou has been an independent since 2020 and supported the Green Party in the 2020 election. Howie Hawkins, yes. Before entering the political arena, Daou was a prolific keyboardist and remixer, appearing on recordings by artists including Miles Davis, Diana Ross, Janet Jackson, and Mariah Carey. He says it's an honor to be a part of Dr. West's historic campaign for president. Dr. West is a man of deep personal integrity, great accomplishment, and far-reaching vision. Okay, so as we all know, and look, we all know who Peter Daou is. I could have, brought up a million tweets of his through the 2016 cycle and after. One of the most militant, vicious Hillary Clinton, David Brock junkyard dogs. Just a profound, bone-deep hatred of the Bernie campaign and the Bernie movement and the Green Party as well at the time. Here's just this kind of sums it up. 26 years in Congress for Bernie is establishment. Doesn't mean he's bad, but first woman POTUS is not establishment. So there he is making the argument. Hillary Clinton was the anti-establishment choice in 2016 because she's a woman. Right.
Nice.
Exactly.
Gonna sit right in.
Yeah. I mean, tonally, that's one of the more benign bangers that he fired off in that cycle. But that kind of reflects just, how shallow a guy he was at the time. Now, sorry, I don't mean to jump the gun here. So anyway, we all know, I don't have to bring up all the screenshots of the different tweets. Obviously, CJ said, that's it, I'm done with the Cornel campaign. He got a lot of pushback for this move. And so Jill Stein thought it necessary to make known that it was she who recruited Peter Daou into the campaign because she was serving as Cornel's interim campaign manager when he was first getting started. And then she took it upon herself to hire the more official long-term staff. So she says, newsflash, it was me that brought Peter Daou to Cornel West. Why? Because I learned how essential an experienced campaign manager is from my campaigns without one. He's the most experienced campaign manager I know of with independent green politics and strong opposition to duopoly. Now, here's where it gets even. This is the worst one, and we'll come back to this in a moment. Though I didn't know of Peter Daou in his days as DNC defender, it's not hard to see how a war-torn, bloody childhood led to fierce opposition to Bush and bondage to the Dem Party. If only more liberal apologists would have this kind of wake-up. With an experienced campaign manager, our team can give Cornel West the support he needs to break the duopoly and give all those thrown under the bus reason to fight back. So you're telling me that you didn't know of him in his days as a DNC defender?
She's lying. In my opinion, she's lying.
That has to be a lie.
She's
lying. Just has to be a lie. And at worst, that is just insane negligence and incompetence. So what are you saying? You don't vet the campaign manager? Is that basically what you're saying?
Well, people are trying to say, no, people are trying to justify it by saying that she didn't know him then. And she knows him now, so maybe she's vetted him now, but she's saying she wasn't aware of him at that time. I think she's lying. You have to be lying. He led the smear campaign against you. He was, as you just said, one of the most vicious attack dolls. Dude worked hand in hand with David Brock for years. He is the guy that came up with Bernie Bros, and Bernie's a Russian agent, and Bernie's a sexist, and all of his supporters are sexist, and all of those smears that happened in the 2015, 2016 campaign, all the smears against Jill Stein about how she's responsible for Donald Trump, all of that stuff, that was Peter Daou. That's who he was. You're telling me you didn't know who he was? I have a very difficult time believing that.
Yeah, it's almost impossible. It's almost impossible to think that she didn't know.
Everybody
and if she
knew.
didn't know of him then she's obviously not aware of just how divisive a choice this is now.
Yes.
Like, it kind of goes hand in hand. Like, you want to say, okay, you vetted him now in retrospect. Well, if you really looked into it, you'd have known that this guy is just too toxic to put in charge of the campaign. Whether you think his transformation is legitimate or not, I'm all about redemption and second chances. That's almost besides the point. The point is, that even getting this guy involved with the campaign is going to drive a wedge right through whatever coalition Cornel West is trying to build. To put him in charge of the campaign.
He spent years. The Cornel West base would be Bernie's supporters, right? That's like people. That's the base of. And this guy spent years trashing those people. I mean, to the highest degrees. An entire smear campaign that lasted for years. Not just the 2015, 2016 campaign. He continued to trash people for years following that. And this is the guy that you chose to put in charge of Cornel West campaign. You have just divided your base in half, and you have created such a major distraction. Look, since this has been announced, nobody's talking about Cornel West policies. They're talking about Peter Daou. And that is such a monumental political miscalculation. It is, it's ridiculous. The idea that anybody thought that this was, we need an experienced campaign. First of all, he's never won a campaign.
He's
a
been loser.
On lots of them.
John Kerry, Hillary Clinton, Marianne
Even
Williamson.
Progressives, the little he's never won, not one single time. You need an experienced campaign manager who's never won and has an incredibly divisive history. Tell me how that makes sense. It doesn't.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely absurd. Also, he started this cycle as campaign manager for Marianne Williamson, which is a Democratic campaign.
After swearing off Democrats.
Right. After swearing off Democrats, a Democrat campaign, a pro-NATO campaign, a pro-World War III campaign. Her position on the Russia-Ukraine war is pretty much identical to Joe Biden's. And so if this guy's convictions are so deeply held, why did he take a job with the Marianne Williamson campaign at the start of this cycle? If one of the main pillars of Cornel's campaign is disband NATO, then why are you recruiting this guy who was just, as of a few weeks ago, on the Marianne campaign? Makes no sense. So then Cornel apparently wants to vouch for her. So he says, serious revolutionaries keep the focus on suffering and struggling of everyday people who fight against empire capitalism, white supremacy, male supremacy, homophobia, transphobia. Superficial ones cater to their individual careers, market opportunities, and personal polemics that bring attention only to themselves.
That second part, he just described Peter Dow's entire career. That second part.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was Peter Daou.
I think he was directing that at Jimmy Dore, it seems like, right?
100%.
Because, I mean, that seems like a pretty targeted swipe there.
Yeah.
But yes, you're right. That does describe Daou in a nutshell. Number one. Number two, serious revolutionaries keep the focus. Serious revolutionaries are very protective of their movement. They don't allow shady characters in. This would be like Che Guevara going to Fidel Castro, being like, hey, I found this new general. Didn't his father used to own one of those tobacco plantations? Yeah, but that was a few years ago. He seems cool now, right? Like, I think he's good. I checked him out, right? So, like, this just, I mean, it's just insane. Serious revolutionary, a serious presidential campaign vets their campaign manager. They vet the campaign manager. And you could say, oh, you did some research on him, you didn't know him back then, and now you know. You clearly do not understand the seriousness of just how divisive a pick like this is. To put him in charge of the campaign is just nonsense. And it's really another heartbreaker because, you know, look, Cornel West, there was a poll that came out just now in Iowa, has him polling at 5 points in Iowa. And that's great. And look, I wish the campaign well, but I'm not at a point now where I can advise people to get invested in this. How can I vouch for a campaign that is so reckless at worst and reckless at best and dishonest at worst about who it chooses to lead the campaign?
Yeah.
At best, this was unbelievably lazy, negligent, and irresponsible. At worst, Jill Stein is fucking lying. It is almost impossible for me to believe, as you said, that she did not know who this guy was.
Everybody knew who he was.
Everybody knew who he was.
Everybody knew who he was. Everybody. If you were a Bernie supporter, if you were a Jill Stein supporter, you knew who Peter Daou was. He made himself incredibly known. He was, again, this guy, this is not like somebody, and this makes me angry. Somebody tried to compare him to Ryan Knight. Oh, you don't take Ryan Knight seriously then? Those are two completely different people. Ryan Knight was just some guy who happened to buy into the Democratic Party establishment's bullcrap. Peter Daou this dude comes from the darkest depths of the establishment. I mean, this is somebody who lives underneath the swamp, or did. If you believe listen, I genuinely hope that he made a transformation. I want to believe that he is a different person, that he has changed. He's seen the error of his ways.
To me, that's
he can do so from the sidelines.
Right.
To put him in a leadership position in your campaign, first of all, that's as you said, that's just, it's grossly negligible. I mean, the idea that you are putting somebody who has that kind of risk associated with them, do y'all not know how infiltration works? Do I need to explain that to you? I mean, this is it blows my mind. Not even just that aspect of it, but again, he is incredibly divisive. You have just shot yourself in both feet before you've even started. It makes no sense whatsoever. None. And I absolutely do not believe that Jill Stein did not know who he was. She knew. There's no question.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just, it doesn't add up, not even close. And you can't, even if the campaign's not going to win, even if the goal is 5%, whatever the goal is, if I'm going to endorse a campaign and I'm going to encourage my audience to invest in a campaign, be it financially or volunteer their time, I have to feel like their time and money is in good hands with the campaign. And there's just no way that I can say that at this point because it's not in good hands. It's not in good hands. No. They can't just be that haphazard about who they hire. And Cornel himself seems just totally checked out. Checked out. I mean, he seemed kind of checked out from the beginning. That's why he was persuaded to run with the People's Party. He said, okay, sure, I'll do it. Then Chris Hedges convinced him to switch to the Greens. Okay, sure, I'll do it. Now Jill Stein is in charge of hiring staff. He just seems to be doing interviews and saying his piece, which is, it's fine. That's his right. But I'm not convinced that he's involved in picking his staff or building his team. I'm not convinced. He just seems like, he sits in front of the John Coltrane quilt and gives interviews, and then everybody else just runs it around him. Even if the campaign's not built to win, it still has to be built strategically. It still has to have a mission. It has to have a purpose, and it has to have a sense of direction. And it breaks my heart to say it, obviously. Everybody here knows that. But it just doesn't seem to have any of those things going for it now. No. I still hope it succeeds. I hope all third parties succeed. I hope the no labels scumbags run somebody. I mean, I'll never consider supporting them, but I hope as many third parties as want to jump in, I hope they jump in. I hope the Libertarians nominate someone good. The Party for Socialism and Liberation just launched a campaign. I wish that campaign well. Like, it's fine. Like, I'm not saying don't go vote third party. And if you want to vote for Cornel West, absolutely vote for Cornel West. I'll probably still end up voting for Cornel West just to fuck the Democrats, just to cause chaos, right? But beyond that, I mean, I'm sorry, I can't tell people to be invested in it, right? Just like, look, the people who want to go vote for RFK, right? In the Democratic primary, whatever. Like, I don't care. Like, if you want, if you can't get it up to jerk off that morning and you want to instead go vote for RFK in the Democratic primary, whatever, knock yourself out. Like, I don't care. I'm not going to discourage you from doing that.
No.
Then that's kind of what I feel about this campaign at this point. Like, I won't discourage people from voting for him if they want to, but I no longer feel like their time is in good hands with the campaign. And once I feel that way, I just can't, in good conscience, tell people that they should go out and get really invested.
No, the electoral system is broken. Everybody knows I don't care about electoral politics. That's why everybody's like, well, why do you care so much then? Because my hope for the Cornel West campaign was that he's not going to win. Come on, we live in a completely broken system. Our elections are garbage. He's not going to win, and likely isn't going to get anywhere near 5%. They won't allow it. However, my hope for the Cornel West campaign, and I've been saying this for ages since he announced his run, was that he would use it as an opportunity to build a movement, a legitimate movement, and he's very clearly not doing that. And Emily in the chat, homegirl, I have never once promoted Peter Daou being a changed man. You can go back and look at my Twitter feed. I've hated the guy since jump. I've never changed my opinion on Peter Daou. Not one time. I've always been skeptical of him. I have never once promoted him as a changed man. I don't think that he is. I hope that he is, because I think that would be the right choice to make. He was an absolute scumbag. I have never once promoted him as a changed man. But this is what is frustrating to me, is that he has and you're right. I think he was kind of prodded into running. I think the People's Party, Nick Brana in particular, tried desperately to get Jimmy Dore to run for president. Jimmy did not want to run for president. I think Cornel West was probably the second, maybe even third choice in the line that they were desperately. I think the People's Party just wanted somebody to run under their banner so that they could elevate themselves. And I think Cornel West bought into that. I don't think he really thought it was going to be a legitimate run. I think he thought he was just going to be helping the People's Party build their brand or whatever. And then exactly he got convinced to switch into the Green Party by his friend Chris Hedges. And now I feel like he's in something that he really never wanted to begin with. He never wanted it to be a legitimate run for president. He never really wanted to do any of this stuff in a serious way. And so now it feels as if this is very haphazardly put together. And he is legitimately checked out and always has been. So again, I'm not going to tell you, I don't vote. I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit. Your vote, in my opinion, doesn't matter. Electoral politics is a waste of time, in my opinion. But if you want to go vote. I will never tell you not to. I just think that, as you just said, there's absolutely no way anybody should be donating to this campaign. Nobody should be investing any time or energy into this campaign, in my opinion. If you want to, go for it. It's your time to waste. But with somebody like Peter Daou at the helm, I would really think seriously about that.
Yeah. Sorry, bear with me one moment. This is our tradition. When we cross 666 audience members in the chat, we hit that. Nice. Yeah, and, so the other point that you made that's interesting about Ryan Knight, because you're right, people do say, well, Ryan Knight used to be this big lib. And the main difference between Ryan Knight and Peter Daou, and the reason this is relevant to this conversation, is that Ryan Knight is an independent podcaster. He does what I do. He sits in his house with a microphone and he talks to people who will hear him talk. Peter Daou is different. Peter Daou is always sniffing around for a gig. I don't know if he's always sniffing around for a job. He always wants to be hired. He's always trying to ingratiate himself with some circle of influence. That's why he joined the Marianne Williamson campaign. He always wants a job. And when you're always looking for a job, you're always looking to win the approval of a certain circle of people. And at the beginning of this cycle, he was not volunteering his time for the Green Party. He needed a gig. And, I do believe he is disillusioned with the establishment Democratic Party. And that's probably why he went to the Marianne campaign. But the fact that Marianne is pro-NATO, pro-Ukraine war, pro-World War III, that was not a deal breaker for him. He said, all right, well, she's to the left of Joe Biden on these issues. That's good enough for me. Where do I sign? Where do I get the check? And so that's the big difference, is that this guy has proven, even post-transformation, even post-revelation, right, whatever sort of epiphany he had, he's always been chasing the next job.
Yeah.
Right? And, the fact that they knew that this guy was a keyboardist for Mariah Carey, but didn't hear of him in 2016 when he was attacking Jill Stein and the Greens, again, that just makes no sense. It makes no sense. There's just no way to really even say that she's being honest there. And, you've talked about the Greens apparently a fair amount. But,
yeah.
Sorry.
No, I have. I mean,
I've
been, that's another thing that people keep, why won't you just support I've never supported the Green Party. I've always had issues with them. I tried to get involved with them in 2012. I voted for Jill Stein in 2012 and 2016. They were very exclusive and exclusionary then. If you didn't want to join their club, they didn't want any part of you. And then in 2020, they very openly rigged their primary for Howie Hawkins, a Russia-gating, Julian Assange smearing, dead naming of Chelsea Manning, Howie Hawkins, an absolute scumbag. And so, and there's been a whole host of evidence to support the fact that there's a ton of corruption. Courtney's in the chat. I've interviewed her. She's experienced it. Matthew Ho had a whole host of issues with his run in North Carolina. The Green Party has been suspect for a very long time. So it's not even just about Cornel West and Peter Daou. The Green Party as a whole has a whole bunch of issues. And it's just weird that people don't want to address those.
Yeah, I mean, we know Courtney very well. She's a great friend of the show. She's taken issue with us over the past several weeks, saying that, where these Green Party stands. And I thought I made clear many times that I've never actually been one. I was suspicious of the Green Party in 2016, when after Trump won, Jill Stein pulled that stunt where she started raising money for those recounts in Michigan, Wisconsin, and PA. Mm-hmm. I thought, well, this is very suspicious, because why is she asking for recounts in states where that Trump won narrowly and where she got a lot of votes? It almost seems like she's apologizing for having cost Hillary the campaign, because she said it was some election integrity audit she was trying to do. That's nonsense, because the Democrats won Nevada and New Hampshire that year by a smaller margin than Trump won Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. So if this was really about making sure the vote counts were accurate, then why wouldn't you call for a recount in the states that Clinton won narrowly? It definitely seemed like she was in damage control mode, trying to save face with the Democrats, because she bought into the narrative that she blew their campaign. Yeah. And so that just struck me as a very suspicious move. Why are you doing this now? If you did cost Hillary the White House, you should wear that as a badge of honor as a third party. That gives you power. That's a flex. Yeah. Instead, she did the opposite. So I've been suspicious of the Greens from that moment on. I've never been a stan for them. I saw an opportunity in Cornel West to cause chaos within the electoral system because of his name ID and because of his high polling out of the gate, which he still has. And I still hope he gets a lot of votes. I hope any third party that runs does well. I wish them well. I don't wish them harm. But it's just not something I can invest in anymore. And it's not something I can tell people to invest in anymore.
No. And it's weird to me that people are, again, gaslighting us about it. Like, oh, I can't believe you're upset that Peter Daou has been, really? You can't believe we're upset about that? Like, it's just the gaslighting that's involved in this, and that everybody should just accept it uncritically, and that nobody should talk about the corruption in the Green Party and all of the other stuff that's going on. It's just weird. It's a very weird set of circumstances. Again, I had really genuinely hoped that Cornel West was going to use this opportunity to build a coalition, to build a movement, to reach out to people across the political spectrum, to try to bring people together. Of course, he's not going to win. It's highly unlikely he's going to get to 5%. And yet he's doing the opposite of what I was hoping that he was going to do. And it sucks. It's disheartening to see. I think it's once again going to devastate actual whole revolutionary movement. I mean, it seems as if, that's always what happens in these situations is people get their hopes up and then they're crushed. And here we are again.
Here we are again.
Here we are again.
Well, Misty, I'll let you go because I know you said you got to go at 10. Thank you so much for coming on here. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find you?
Okay, so I'm on Twitter all the time at Sarcasm Stardust. I host a radio show on TNT Radio, which, by the way, there's a troll in the chat talking about Jesse Zerwell has all kinds of. Jesse Zerwell's a friend of mine. Like, we used to host a show together. His radio show is on the same network as mine. I have a show on the same network, y'all. So I have a radio show on TNT Radio. It's called The Misty Winston Show. I did not come up with the name. And it is on Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. Tonight I have Chris Legion. And a whole host of amazing people stroll through every week. So check it out, 6 p.m. on tntradio.live, or there's an app, all that good stuff. And it's on all the podcast platforms. Yeah, I think that's it. I think cool. I usually forget something, but I think that's it.
Well, you have your bitch show, right?
Oh, yeah. I've been taking kind of a hiatus from that. Usually it's on Saturdays. I have it on my channel, Bitch with Comrade Misty, also on INN. Shout out to INN and Indy also. Indy runs my Substack. Indy helps me with booking. I could not survive without Indy. So please go and support INN, Indy News Network, all of that stuff. I think it's, Indy's going to kill me. Indy.network or what is it? I know he's in the chat. What is it? Something.network.
Indy.news?
No, I don't know.
They have
I'm so bad at remembering websites, but I don't know. He'll drop it in the chat. It's yeah, it's good stuff.
Awesome.
They're awesome. And thanks for having me. This was fun.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure. Great to see you again.
Yeah,
thanks so much.
Too. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Bye-bye. Misty Winston, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. All right, folks, we'll take some super chats here, and then we got some show to do. Still a lot of show to go. I felt confident doing the second half solo because we have a lot of material to cover, and so I will not have to fill time with Russell and I's crosstalk as we often do. We can run a very business-like second half of the show. So let's take some super chats before we get into that. Patrick Donahue, thank you so much for the €10, my friend. Hello from Dubai, lads. R.E. Peter Daou, he took the shame trajectory, or same, or both. I could see how that means both. As Russell on his show, and Jimmy Dore admits he was an Obama shit-lib not too long ago, is Dow not allowed to follow the same path? Well, he certainly is, and I think, hopefully, your concerns were answered in that last segment. It's not that he's not allowed a second chance at redemption. It's just he's not the kind of person I would put in a leadership role, partly because he's not completely trustworthy. If he was, he wouldn't have started the campaign managing Marianne's campaign, because that's a pro-NATO campaign. Like, that's a point I really think is important, right? Like, if Marianne Williamson's support for agitating World War III by funding Nazis in Ukraine, if that was not a deal breaker for him, then how serious are we supposed to take his sort of transformation into this, avowed leftist, right? I still think he is an opportunist to a large extent. But even if he isn't, that's fine if he wants to be an advisor, right? He wants to just send you his input. In a leadership role, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense politically because of what a wedge he drives through the movement. But thank you for the donation, my friend. Appreciate it very much. Keeper of Track, and thanks for the $5. Keaton, your comment about Cornel having 90 days to get his act together seems rather prescient as he stepped in it again. It's a good point. I forgot all about that. When he launched with the People's Party, I said give him 90 days, which would have been till about Labor Day, so it's only about 10 days ago. And it turns out, at the 90-day point, it seems I've rendered a verdict. So good call on that. I forgot about that, but thank you for remembering, and thanks for the donation. Eric Husso, F Morning Joe, give me some of that glorious morning dew. Who's Mika today? Well, I would never compare Misty Winston to Mika, but she did, I guess, play that role this morning on the air. But yes, follow her on Twitter too. Sarcasm Stardust is her handle, and it's a great handle. I don't think she mentioned that at the end of her time there. Pickle the Pirate, thanks for the $5. Hoping DD resist the ball washing impulse. R.E. Dow, RBN, HLM, citing his tweets from 2016 while ignoring everything he said since then is pathetic. Well, I don't think we lived up to your hopes there, my friend. But once again, to me, that's besides the point. It's really besides the point whether or not his transformation is legitimate. The point is, you know what a divisive figure he is. And you know, if you have any instinct at all, which apparently Jill Stein either doesn't or she's lying about the fact that she didn't know who he was at the time, you know that someone that divisive is going to drive a wedge through whatever coalition you're trying to build. And that's counterproductive. You can't have that. You have to run a more professional, polished operation than that, even if you're not going to win. Even if you're not going to win, you still need a strategy. You still have to have, yes, a Machiavellian streak. Cornel said to Jimmy Dore, well, I'm not coming from a Machiavellian place. You're running for office. You have to. You have to. That's the gig. That's the gig. If you don't want to do that, then, whatever. Be a thought leader. Be a movement leader. There's plenty of good that Cornel West can do, and there's plenty of good that he has done outside of electoral politics. You enter the electoral arena, you have to have a cunning about you. You have to have a wit about you. You have to have a mission. And it doesn't seem like this campaign has one at this point. And it's really unfortunate because everybody knows how enthused I was about the campaign when it launched. Pickle the Pirate. I remember when changing people with the power of your ideas was considered a good thing. Apparently now it's a disqualifier. What a world. Go West 24. All right. Well, I think I've addressed that. And like I said, despite all that, I still wish the campaign well. I still wish them well. I still hope they get a lot of votes. I really do. The Willie Bragg Show. Thanks for the $5, my friend. Appreciate it. What the hell is up with the UAW? At this rate, they're going to be as ineffective as my United Food Commercial Workers Local 204 in North Carolina. Are you in the union there? I didn't know that. That's interesting. Maybe we can talk about that sometime. But thank you, Willie. Appreciate that. Mr. Methuselah, thanks for the $10. What this tells you is that a corporate, government-controlled strike, U.S. big labor, is a joke. Yeah, another big disappointment. Another huge disappointment. Thank you. And just like I wish the Cornel West campaign well, I wish the UAW well. I hope what he's doing here makes some kind of sense that I'm just too dumb to figure out at this point. I sincerely do hope that. I just don't get it. Pete Sweet, member for 3 months. Thank you, my friend. UAW member for 30 years, retired from GM in Detroit. All right, pick a company and strike. 97% back a strike. Strike until demands are met. This is not serious. Well, thank you. I'm curious to know if you were on that live stream because his live streams got really popular. Like that live stream that we played, that had 60,000 views. That's a lot of views for a UAW live stream. But the way the chat just turned on him when he started mentioning this stand-up strike, drip, drip, drip strategy, it was pretty amazing. And I don't know if you were part of that. But yes, 97% back to strike under the original terms, which is all 145,000 of us walk out. When they voted to authorize a strike, that was the strike plan. People didn't vote for this stand-up strike bullshit. So thank you for pointing that out, Pete. Appreciate that. Ruthless Criticism. Thanks for the $10, my friend. In a few days, he's going to reveal that they hired Peter Daou as the strike manager. Good one. I like that. Eric Housseau. Thank you, my friend. Not one single presidential candidate is taking a golden opportunity to truly stand with labor and denounce this weak move. Yeah, that's a good point. Shama Sawant launched her podcast yesterday, but it must have been pre-recorded because they were talking about Amazon. And so I'm very curious to see what she has to say about this. I'm sure she'll have a great take, as she pretty much always does. KN Kareem, thanks for the $9.99. Off topic, who can we complain to these fucking city bikes? They've built them all over my neighborhood. I'm mad. We don't want them. They're taking up well-needed parking spaces. New York City is trash. When I lived in Williamsburg, I had a rent-stabilized apartment in the north side of Williamsburg. I lived on the corner of Berry Street and North 8th, right above George and Jack's Tavern. And I kept a van there because I would sometimes have to drive out for work. And they put a whole city bike row right in front of my building. And so that took the good parking spots. So I've been there. I feel your pain. I feel your pain. And thank you for the donation. As for what recourse you have, I don't know. I don't know how responsive Eric Adams would be to really anybody's grievances about anything. So, like, you know, in a city famous for its assholes, New York elected the biggest asshole in the city, mayor. Derek, thanks for the $5. Staggered strike allows strike funds to last longer, and if SCAB workers or other contingencies in place, company ends up paying both workers and SCABs. But why would the... Okay, so you're saying it allows the strike funds to last longer, but you're still... That doesn't answer the question of a divided workforce. Like, if you're saying that these conditions are unacceptable, right? This contract, these terms are unacceptable. Why would you make 90% of your workers work for unacceptable terms and let 10% of them strike, and then 15%, and then 20%? Like, if the premise of the strike is that the workers are getting screwed, and you set a date past which point we will not show up anymore because we're getting screwed, how does it make sense to make most of the workforce continue to work for shitty terms and continue to produce product and therefore profit for the automakers who are your enemy in these negotiations? I understand what you're saying. I think that's valid. But at the same time, I don't understand the strategy behind it in terms of building solidarity among your ranks, which ultimately the strike's going to have to end in a good contract, or else it was all for naught. So now if you don't get a good contract, now you're going to have, okay, 80% of the people had to work through it, and the other 20% got to strike and get strike pay. I just don't buy it. I just don't buy it. And again, I'm not an expert on this. I'm open to people's input about this, but it doesn't make sense to me. Pete Sweet, thanks for the $5. Totally agree with Misty. Somebody got to him. Seems scared. 97% of membership backing him. There is no half-ass measures when it comes to a strike. Appreciate that. Saul Good, thanks for the $10. Appreciate that very much. Folks, please hit that like button and please hit that subscribe button. We will do a next Super Chat break in a little while, as well as our patron scroll. I have not forgotten about you guys. We just had a guest for an hour who had a hard out at 10. And so let's move right along. Speaking of labor and capital, here's a video that went viral of Gurner Group CEO and multimillionaire property developer in Australia, Tim Gurner. This was a rant that he went on that went viral, got about 23 million views on Twitter. And so let's hear from Tim Gurner, who looks like Scott Weiland from the Stone Temple Pilots had he done even more drugs. That's what this guy looks like to me. It's the first thing I thought of when I saw him. But let's hear his opinion on the post-pandemic labor market and how we fix things back to the pre-pandemic normalcy. Keep in mind, by the way, this is the same guy who made news a few years ago when he said that the reason why young people couldn't buy houses is because they were spending too much money on avocado toast. Same guy. So let's hear from Tim Gurner.
I think the problem that we've had is that we have people decided that they didn't really want to work so much anymore through COVID, and that has had a massive issue on productivity. Tradies have definitely pulled back on productivity. They have been paid a lot to do not too much in the last few years, and we need to see that change. We need to see unemployment rise. Unemployment has to jump 40-50% in my view. We need to see pain in the economy. We need to remind people that they work for the employer, not the other way around. I mean, there's been a systematic change where employees feel the employer is extremely lucky to have them, as opposed to the other way around. So it's a dynamic that has to change. We've got to kill that attitude, and that has to come through hurting the economy, which is what the whole global, the world is trying to do. The governments around the world are trying to increase unemployment to get that to some sort of normality. And we're seeing it. I think every employer now is seeing it. I mean, there is definitely massive layoffs going off. People might not be talking about it, but people are definitely laying people off, and we're starting to see less arrogance in the employment market, and that has to continue because that will cascade across the cost balance.
Okay. Now, the key word in that whole monologue there is normality. Normality. What he's expressing here is commonplace amongst the capitalist class, amongst ownership, amongst management. This is a very normie, mainstream view amongst these people. This is how they view labor. This is how capital views labor. So no, we do not have a problem. Courtney, sorry to single you out again, but I know you're a good sport about it because you give it to us a lot, so that's all good. It's not a problem of corporatism. This is a problem of capitalism. This is fundamentally how capitalists view workers. This is what it's all about. And he views normalcy as a dynamic where people with capital can exploit people without capital. That is how he sees the status quo. That was the status quo before the pandemic, and that is the status quo that he wants to usher in once again. He puts it there very, very simply, very, very confidently, very calmly, very straightforwardly. There's no mystery about his intention. Now, because that went viral, he did issue an apology to the Daily Mail. Tim Gurner, Rich Lister boss, issues groveling apology after declaring unemployment needs to rise by 50% because workers are paid too much and too arrogant. Let's read his apology, which he gave to this newspaper. At the AFR Property Summit this week, I made some remarks about unemployment and productivity in Australia that I deeply regret and were wrong, he said in a statement. There are clearly important conversations to have in this environment of high inflation, pricing pressures on housing and rentals due to a lack of supply, and other cost of living issues. There is no lack of supply. There is no lack of supply. I don't know about Australia. I know in New York, I forget the exact number, but there are a lot of empty apartments out there. So this idea that there's a lack of supply is nonsense. My comments were deeply insensitive to employees, tradies, and families across Australia who are affected by these cost of living pressures and job losses. I want to be clear. I do appreciate that when someone loses their job, it has a profound impact on them and their families. And I sincerely regret that my words did not convey empathy for those in that situation. He says, I want to be clear. I appreciate that when someone loses their job, it has a profound impact on them. He doesn't say, I want to be clear. I respect workers and want them to be paid better. He didn't say that. He said, I appreciate that when they lose their job, it's tough. So he's apologizing for calling for a 50% spike in unemployment. He's not apologizing, even in this apology that he issued, he's not apologizing for his attitude towards workers. Not at all. Not at all. He told you exactly what he thought there. And he apologized because it went viral. Same thing when the climate activists crashed that fundraiser for the Massachusetts governor. And the rich guy, I forget his name, Bruce Parsley, I think his name was. He got caught on camera telling the young activist girl, I don't mind if you die, right? He went and he issued an apology. Why? Because the video went semi-viral. That's why he said he was sorry. He didn't say he was sorry because he was actually sorry. He said he was sorry because people actually saw him for who he is. And this is the ultimate conflict that is accelerating in intensity right now. And this is why when you hear people like Crystal Ball and Kyle Kulinski talk about all the progress that's been made for labor because of Biden's appointments to the NLRB, this is why those ultimately ring so hollow. Because ultimately, a bureaucratic instrument like the NLRB is not going to be able to stave off this ultimate showdown between labor and capital, because that is what's coming. That is what Karl Marx said was coming. He said capitalism will end in a series of ever-intensifying crises that occur with greater and greater frequency. Hello? Tell me that's not right on the money, right? And this is what we're talking about. So none of these sort of half measures, right? None of these sort of piecemeal accomplishments can actually stave off this showdown, because we are in a state where this divide has just become so unbelievably pronounced to the point where everybody can see it, to the point where guys like this feel so confident that they can just sit up on stage and say, yeah, no, we have to return to a normality in which workers are grateful that they have a job in the first place. Not that capitalists, not that owners are grateful that workers are willing to exchange their time for a wage that ultimately, as we know, is not connected to the growth of the company. If it was, wages will be much higher. We know that, right? So this is a conflict that is inevitable. It's a conflict that has become so much more dramatic now than it's ever been because the masks are coming off. And so this is why, ultimately, at the end of the day, this conflict is going to end in struggle. And there's going to be winners and there's going to be losers. And the fact that you have a council at the NLRB now that is more friendly to union drives than Trump's council, yeah, I mean, you want to call that progress of a kind, call it progress of a kind. That's progress the way reusable bags instead of plastic bags are progress in terms of staving off, some apocalyptic event. It's nowhere near enough. It's not nearly enough to reverse the trajectory, that we're on now. Not even close. So now we're going to take some more super chats, and I will encourage you all at this point to check out our Patreon at patreon.com/do dissidents. Thank you, Jake, for hitting that scroll. How about a round of applause for Jake in the producer booth today? Jake doesn't usually do Friday mornings, but he volunteered this time, and I took him up on it because I knew I was going to be solo for the second half. So thank you, Jake. When you support the show at patreon.com/do dissidents, you get access to patron-exclusive live streams. We are going to be scheduling our next one very, very shortly. Russell is across the pond, so it's a little more difficult to schedule, but we will be doing that very, very shortly. You also get your name up in lights here in the show credits, and you get call-in access to all of our regularly scheduled live streams. So we really do try and make it worth your while. We got a bunch of new signups this week, so that's awesome. Thank you so much. You are the backbone of the show. You are what keep the show going. You can go to patreon.com/do dissidents or dodissidents.substack.com to sign up. If you can become a paid Substack subscriber, that would be amazing. It's $5 a month. Also, if you can't be a paid Substack subscriber, sign up at the free level. That is basically a newsletter where not only do you get announcements when and where we're going live, but if we have to change the schedule up like we did last Sunday because of my family matter, you can get, obviously, an email telling you, hey, we're going to move the show, from this time to this time. It helps you stay in touch with us. You also get audio podcasts of all of our live streams. So if you miss one and you're on the road and you want to listen instead of watch, you can do that. So we hope you can go to dodissidents.substack.com and sign up either for free or if you become a paid member, obviously, that is awesome as well. Let's go to some more super chats here. Got some more to get to. DC, thanks for the $5. Labor unions have been co-opted since FDR gave J. Edgar Hoover free rein to infiltrate and depose radicals nationwide. It seemed like, and this is what Misty said, and thank you for the comment, it seemed like this time could have been different, but it seems, for the moment, at least, that it isn't. Derek, thanks for the $5. Not from this year. Charles B. Dean, sitting next to Woody, died in 2022. Oh, is that right? Was that an older one? Was that an older video? Interesting. Is that that's the actress? Interesting. I'll have to look that up because I know that really made the rounds. And I'm surprised that didn't make the rounds when it did break. But I'll look into that. DC, thanks for the $2. Vote Cornel West, COINTELPRO, Mossad, 2024. Yeah, good one. Thanks, Misty, for bringing up Correct the Record Pack. Okay, so the David Brock thing was really something that actually David Brock got me involved in the Bernie Sanders campaign because around January of 2016, I was of the opinion, yeah, it'd be great if Bernie can win. It doesn't seem possible, and so that sucks. I wasn't radicalized then the way I am now. But what actually motivated me to get involved was an op-ed that David Brock wrote, the title of which was Black Lives Don't Matter to Bernie Sanders. That was the title of the article. And he put that out in response to the Simon and Garfunkel ad with, the song playing under the shots of the large crowd sizes of rallies that Bernie held in Iowa and New Hampshire, which, of course, are almost entirely white states. And so there were almost entirely white crowds. And Brock thought, this is an opportunity to try and make the point that Bernie Sanders, who was protesting and getting arrested in the Jim Crow South during the same period of time when Hillary Clinton was calling herself a proud Goldwater girl, this is a good opportunity to make the point that Bernie Sanders doesn't care about black people. And when I read that, I thought to myself, okay, this is just so vile and so hideous and so sleazy that I have to get involved to try and stop it, even if I can't. And so I actually do credit David Brock with radicalizing me a bit, because had I not seen that headline, it's quite likely that I would have just been a mopey, sort of left-leaning, progressive liberal. One of these guys who, oh, yeah, Bernie, that would have been great, but it just wasn't to be, and oh, well. But it was actually David Brock, being the lowlife of all lowlifes, who actually snapped me out of that. And so, in a certain sense, I owe him a debt of gratitude. Ed, thank you for the $5. A serious campaign needs professional help. All professionals would come from the duopoly. I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't. I think there are people with good instincts who are not, born and bred inside the Democratic Party or the GOP. I think it takes instinct. It takes fighting strategy. That's really what it takes. And once again, it's not just that David Brock is from the duopoly. It's that he was the most vicious, vile, and hateful smear merchant of the Democratic Party, right? This is not just like, whatever. It's not like they took John Favreau and radicalized him, all right? I mean, that wouldn't be great, but all right, whatever. No, you're talking about one of the nastiest, most dishonest, sleaziest scumbags out there. And you have to trust that his evolution is sincere. And even if you do trust his evolution is sincere, you just know it's not politically smart. You know it is far too divisive a move to put him in a leadership role. You cannot entrust your movement to a guy like Peter Daou, who just a few weeks ago was on the pro-NATO Marianne Williamson campaign, which not only was that a pro-NATO campaign, that campaign was an organizational disaster, which we've talked about several times. So it's not even like he has a track record of competency, right? Like that, if he was managing the Marianne campaign, that how is that a feather in his cap? Oh yeah, no, this guy knows how to keep a team together, quitting left and right. Now we can blame a lot of that on her, but still, it reflects on him that he involved himself with that campaign to begin with, and he was obviously unable to protect that organization from the candidate. Joshua Beaverhausen, my boyfriend hates Keaton's voice. Oh, I'm sorry about that. But you adore it. Oh, okay, great. Thank you. Then I had a dream I was dating Keaton, and he was 8 feet tall. Really? Wow. Interesting. All right. Well, I am 6 feet even. I say I'm 6'1", but I think I'm actually 6 even. I grew up my whole life, I was expecting to be 6'3" because my dad is 6'3". So I was looking forward to getting a little taller. And I know, if you're 6 feet tall, it looks kind of shitty to bitch that you're not taller, because there are a lot of people who wish they were 6 feet tall and aren't 6 feet tall. So I don't want to appear ungrateful, but I was expecting a little more heights as I was growing up. And I fell just short of expectations. So woe is me. Thanks, Pickle the Pirate, for the $20. Appreciate that. Stalin was in the Tsar's secret police before joining the Bolsheviks. Shocked to learn that wasn't a serious revolution. I worked for a third-party progressive campaign in Massachusetts. It's so hard it is to construct something from nothing. Experience matters. They should have hired you then. Why don't you get involved? Apparently, they'll hire anybody who emails them, because they obviously didn't look into David Brock very much. So I would think you might have a chance, right? I mean, I would seriously. And look, the other thing about this, and I've heard people say, Jen Perlman, I heard her say on a recent stream, she emailed the campaign trying to volunteer, trying to help, hasn't heard back. What's that about? Like, there's no one home. There's no one home. There's no one manning the phones. There's no one responding to the emails. It's just sitting there. It's just sitting there. I'm not sensing a sense of direction or urgency there. It breaks my heart to say it. You all know that. You all know that. All right. DC, thanks for the $5. The recounts exposed that the Green Party votes were not counted in multiple counties. Why did a federal judge shut it down as soon as that came to light? You're talking about the recounts that Jill Stein funded? Because I know they raised a ton of money. The Michigan recount alone cost almost $1 million. And she raised that, oddly enough, from libs. I remember there was this one guy, in fact, the guy who Russell and I got to know each other by trolling on his posts. He was spreading around that petition for the recounts. He was a devastated, butthurt Democrat after November 2016. And he was spreading that around, saying, I don't like Jill Stein, but we got to support this recount. I didn't know about the Green Party votes. And I didn't hear much noise about that coming from her after that. I mean, you could be right. I take your word for it, obviously. But I did not hear much about that coming from her after those recounts. Fake elections are fake. Who counts and certifies the votes? Yo, take that shit to Pasta Show. All right? Get him in trouble. Just kidding. Thank you, DC. Appreciate it. The People Infinite. Hope Sabby's interview convinces Peter to hire Woody. Sabby is Sabby interviewing Peter Daou? Is that right? Is that what you're talking about there? I don't know. I haven't heard anything about that. I've been a little out of the loop, so I'll fill you guys in. I didn't want to talk about this with Misty here because she had limited time. But my son was showing some symptoms of mono, which my other son, Beckett, was diagnosed with a couple weeks prior. And we assumed on Sunday that, he caught a virus from his brother and that it was, going to be a little bit of a tough haul, but, we'll monitor him and we'll get through it. Then it got to the point where he couldn't take liquids or food and he could barely talk because his mouth was just so inflamed. It was horrible. And so we had to take him to the ER just to get him some IV, just to sort of hydrate him to get some of the inflammation down. And then they suspected this disease called Kawasaki's, which is an autoimmune response that causes widespread inflammation. It's rare but treatable, and so they had to admit him to the hospital, and they put him on IV medication, which thankfully seems to have worked. We obviously have to monitor him for any lingering effects and symptoms, but he is home, doing well, and thank you guys very much for your support through that. Pardon me. It was very kind of you guys. I got tons of messages on Twitter and through Patreon and Substack and email. And so thank you guys all very much for that. But we are doing considerably better. And that answers Martin's question. Martin, thank you so much for that very generous donation. I appreciate that. I wish I had a singing bowl or a prop here that I could ring for you. But thank you very much for the donation. And where in Italy is Russell now? I forget. I was in touch with Russell, I think, yesterday, but I didn't know exactly where he was. Was he in Florence yesterday? Was that it? But thank you, Martin. I appreciate that. If Russell's still in the chat, maybe he'll let you know. Let's take a couple of Rumble rants here. Bonzo Beans, thanks for the $1. I like this gal. Yes, Misty's great, and you should check out the Misty Winston show on TNT Radio. It's on 5 days a week. It's a great show. It also gets published as a podcast. And check out Bitch, which she does on YouTube with the Indie News Network. Trimble Von House, thanks for the $2. By the way, folks, if you want to give any Rumble rants, we will read them. We got Jake in the booth today, and so thanks, Jake, for being here, and thank you guys all for the support. I signed up to West emails because I was excited, and then unsigned up after hearing about the campaign manager. Like, what the fuck? Well, this is what it means. Like, listen, I know some people are a little upset that people are reacting as badly as they are to the Peter Daou hire. I understand there are going to be people who say, oh, come on, maybe he's a changed man, he's experienced, blah, blah, blah. The point is, it is inevitable, right? Even if you're correct, let's say I say you are correct, that Peter Daou is to be trusted and he brings some experience and leadership to the team. Now, I'm not saying that's what I feel, but I will grant you that for the sake of argument. It's still inevitable that it is going to cause the kinds of divisions in the ranks expressed here and expressed in a few other chats and expressed all over social media this past week. And so for that reason, it's a stupid hire. And you can't be making stupid hires like that if you want to make people feel comfortable supporting your campaign. So there you have it. Bonzo Beans, thanks for the $1. This one I can't put on the screen because it's a scroll, but I'll read it. The only way Dow could possibly be an asset to the Cornel campaign would be full transparency and honesty surrounding his appointment and a weekly, well-articulated, believable mea culpa directly from Dow. He's issued those mea culpas. It's not that he hasn't issued enough mea culpas. It's the fact that he's still a careerist, and so he's still a little suspect in that way. And it's the fact that he's not particularly competent. John Kerry, Hillary Clinton, Marianne Williamson, loser, loser, loser. And the fact that he's just too divisive a figure to put in a leadership role. Again, you want to have him advise you every once in a while? Fine. I mean, I don't really see why, but whatever. I mean, don't turn him away from, sending you an email every now and then. To put him in charge, there's just no real justification for that in my view. Bonzo Beans again. Then Dow could theoretically be a light bearer charting the path from an aggressive status quo shitlib to post-duopoly activist, showing others the trajectory in a relatable way. Pipe dream. Yeah, look, it's not that he hasn't articulated that, right? It's that he has credibility issues, and even beyond credibility issues, he has not proven to be competent. I mean, the Marianne campaign was a disaster, and he ran it for a while. Not only was it a disaster, but the premise of it made no sense because on the defining issue of the day, which is a Russia-Ukraine war, she's in lockstep with Joe Biden. So if you started out this cycle, the 2024 cycle, in that camp, then how serious are you, right? All right, let's move on. We got some more stuff to do today. All right, so this is kind of a big one here. Kind of a big set piece, if you will. They call this in the business a set piece. Elon Musk in some hot water over Starlink, SpaceX, and Ukraine. This is from the New York Times. Elon Musk acknowledges withholding satellite service to thwart Ukrainian attack. The Starlink satellite internet service, which is operated by Mr. Musk's rocket company SpaceX, has been a digital lifeline for soldiers and civilians in Ukraine. This is from the New York Times. A top advisor to Ukraine's president accused Elon Musk of enabling Russian aggression after the billionaire entrepreneur acknowledged denying satellite internet service in order to prevent a Ukrainian drone attack on a Russian naval fleet last year. The Starlink satellite internet service, which is operated, by Mr. Musk's rocket company SpaceX, has been a digital lifeline in Ukraine since the early days of the war for both civilians and soldiers in areas where digital infrastructure has been wiped out. On Thursday, CNN reported on an excerpt from Walter Isaacson's upcoming biography, Elon Musk, later published by the Washington Post, said that the billionaire had ordered the deactivation of the Starlink satellite service near the coast of Crimea last September to thwart the Ukrainian attack. The excerpt said that Mr. Musk has conversations with a Russian official that led him to worry that an attack on Crimea could spiral into a nuclear conflict. Later on Thursday, Mr. Musk responded on his social media platform to say that he hadn't disabled the service, but had rather refused to comply with an emergency request from Ukrainian officials to enable Starlink connections to Sevastopol on the occupied Crimean peninsula. Pardon me. See, the thing about doing a show solo is you don't get to rest your vocal cords while your co-host talks. So I'm going to have to go for the water in a moment. That was in effect an acknowledgement that he had made the decision to prevent a Ukrainian attack. Now, this is from the CNN reporting on that, where they actually report on the excerpt from Isaacson's book, where Elon Musk says to his biographer, "How am I in this war?" Musk asks Isaacson. "Starlink was not meant to be involved in wars. It was so people can watch Netflix and chill and get online for school and do good, peaceful things, not drone strikes." Pardon me. So, all right, there's some inconsistencies here because he says, how am I in this war? Well, Elon Musk donated this service to Ukraine. So he was definitely willing to help Ukraine fight Russia, which means he's not necessarily a man of peace. Now, he might be parsing, well, I saw the Ukraine war as a defensive war at the outset, but now that it seems maybe he's gotten a little red-pilled on this, maybe he now sees that actually this conflict was egged on by NATO. And so in a certain sense, the Ukrainian effort is a war of offense on the West's behalf. Perhaps he's a little red-pilled there, but it's certainly the case that he has been supportive of Ukraine from the start of this. That's why they're able to use his service to begin with. The Starlink regions in question were not activated, he tweets out on September 7th, 6:31 p.m. This is when this story broke. Keep in mind, folks, this is in relation to a story that happened last year, right? The Ukrainian attack in question was in 2022. News is just breaking now that this book is coming out. I love, by the way, how these biographers sit on all this real scandalous information for a year, right? It's like it's in the public interest to know it, but because I have a book coming out in a year, I'm just going to sit on it, and so the public can wait to know this until I can sell my book once it's done. He goes on, both sides should agree to a truce. Every day that passes, more Ukrainian and Russian youth die to gain and lose small pieces of land with borders barely changing. This is not worth their lives at 6:41. And then at 6:48, there was an emergency request from government authorities to activate Starlink all the way to the Sevastopol, the obvious intent being to sink most of the Russian fleet at anchor. If I had agreed to their request, then SpaceX would be explicitly complicit in a major act of war and conflict escalation. Okay, so what he's saying is, I didn't deactivate any existing service. I simply refused to comply with requests to activate emergency service for this Ukrainian attack on Crimea, which, of course, is a red line for Russia. So the fear is absolutely legitimate that had he participated in that, he would have been complicit in escalating the war. So that's all valid. But it's not good enough for the media, especially Rachel Maddow, who in a segment on this had this to say about Elon Musk.
So, I mean, not to get too simple here, but Mr. Musk is American. He's an American citizen. And it is the explicit, out loud, not at all hidden, totally overt, totally emphatic policy of the United States government to support Ukraine in its war against Russia after Russia invaded them. We provide Ukraine, our ally, lots of military aid.
Sorry, I have to play this again because this is just kind of hilarious.
Policy of the United States government. Out loud, not at all hidden, totally overt, totally emphatic policy of the United States government to support Ukraine in its war against Russia.
You wouldn't want to defy the totally overt and emphatic policy of the United States government under any circumstances, would you? Oh, yeah, you would when Donald Trump is president, right? When the government is not a government that you approve of. At that point, you have a duty to resist the emphatic position of the United States government. Now that the good people are in charge, now that the Democrats are in charge, now that the nice, effete liberals are in charge, now it's an act of treason to defy the emphatic policy of the United States government. Hey, if you don't want oligarchs defying the wishes of the Pentagon, then maybe you shouldn't entrust rich people, private citizens, for-profit actors with those capabilities. To her credit, actually, that's basically what Liz Warren said this week, right? And she said, look, we just shouldn't put this power in their hands. Now, where she's coming from is totally hideous and vile, right? She's upset that he didn't help escalate the war. But at least that's an argument. At least that's a sound point. Hey, this is what the military-industrial complex is. You put this power in the hands of these private actors with the expectation that they will play ball because they're getting contracts. The problem with Elon Musk, the problem when you entrust that power to one of the 5 richest men in the world, is that Elon Musk has what we call in the business, fuck you money, right? Where he doesn't need the contract. And in this case, he wasn't even getting paid for the service. He was donating those services because he wanted to help Ukraine fight the Russians. But she goes on.
Russia invaded them. We provide Ukraine, our ally, lots of military aid and training and intelligence and all sorts of other assistance. They are our ally in that war. But there's this one American private citizen who is intervening to try to stop Ukraine from winning the war, to try to stop Ukraine from defending itself against this Russian invasion, trying to stop it and, in fact, stopping it by turning their communication lines on and off at will as he sees fit, or as someone sees fit.
And who might that someone be? Any guesses in the chat? Who might she be referring to as that someone, given Rachel Maddow's record, right? Who might that someone be? Let's go back to this thread here because Glenn Greenwald had a good response to this segment. Listen for yourself to see how fascist these people are. And I mean fascist in the classic historical sense, not online speak for not a Democrat. Maddow thinks all U.S. citizens are duty-bound to make themselves and their property available to serve U.S. war policy. Absolutely correct take, and absolutely fascism. But who was she talking about? Who is she talking about? I see some guesses. They look like good guesses. Let's go to another media stooge, David Ignatius from the Washington Post. He interviewed Walter Isaacson about his book, and he puts things a little bit more on the nose.
Not a doubt. And
sorry about that. Here we go. Oops.
Start by asking you about Elon Musk's newest public admirer, Vladimir Putin. Putin said yesterday at an economic forum in Vladivostok, when it comes to private business, Elon Musk, he is without a doubt an outstanding person, one has to admit. I think everyone would admit that all around the world, he is an active, talented businessman. That's a real gee whiz comment from Vladimir Putin.
The type of compliment you don't want to get.
Well, maybe, but it does lead people to wonder about this relationship. There are times when you wonder almost if it's a bromance. And I want to ask you about what you've learned about Musk's contacts with Putin. Has he spoken with him, as has often been suggested? What does he think about him? And maybe most to the point, if Donald Trump became president, what sort of relationship would you imagine that Musk would have with Putin?
Oh, my.
Well, let's start with whether or not
Donald Trump would make him the ambassador. That's what I think. I think Elon Musk would be Secretary of State under a Donald Trump administration, and we'd give all of Ukraine to Putin. That's what I think. No, let's hear his answer, because his answer is good. Don't forget, this is the guy who wrote the book, right? So this is a good source of information here. So here we go.
Talk to Putin. I know some people have said that Musk goes around saying, "Oh, I talked to Putin." Whenever I talked to Musk, he said, no, I talked to the Russian ambassador, somebody, and sometimes I get messages, of what this is, what Soviet Russian policy is. But as far as I know, he told me he had no direct conversations with President Putin. And as far as his relationship, he has this almost hero complex. So as you know full well, when the Russians invaded Ukraine, he immediately came to the aid of Ukraine, and Viasat, the satellite company, its satellites were all disabled. Even the U.S. and other military couldn't do satellite communication. So Ukraine, as Vice Minister Fedorov has said often, would have been crushed had Starlink, had SpaceX and Musk not rushed in Starlink satellites. So I think that he still is quite in favor of protecting Ukraine. I also know from talking to him, he thinks that this war has gone on quite a long time, and perhaps a ceasefire would be useful now.
Yeah, so it seems like, according to his biographer, Elon has undergone a transformation of sorts from being staunchly pro-Ukraine, which is why he donated these services in the first place, to now thinking, hey, the war's gone on too long. It's not worth this outrageous loss of life. And I don't want to be complicit in crossing a Russian red line, which could escalate the war further and cause an exponentially greater loss of life. And to the people who have a problem with that, they have to understand it's very important to cite these numbers. And I've cited these a few times, but I feel it's very important to cite these numbers, right? In Bakhmut alone, which is one city where the fighting went on for a little over 1 year, Ukrainians, the Ukrainian people who are the ultimate victims of this war, lost 75,000 people. 75,000 in 1 year in one city. The United States lost fewer than 5,000 troops throughout the entire Iraq war. And so you talk about the devastation that war causes and the horrific death count of this war in just the first year and a half. That's the question that you have to ask yourself. Do you want to be complicit in escalating it even further? And the explanation on Isaacson's part makes perfect sense. That Elon wanted to help the Ukrainians fight, so he's not exactly anti-war. Misty was very emphatic that I say that, and so I agree with her because we were going to do this segment with her, but there was just a lot of video involved, and so I didn't want to have her wait and watch video because she only had an hour. But she said, don't call Elon anti-war, whatever you do it. Good point. Point taken. Point taken. He started this out as a Ukraine hawk, which is why they have access to those systems in the first place. But now it seems like he thinks it's gone too far and he doesn't want to take it further, which seems reasonable to me. Does not seem reasonable to David Ignatius, nor Rachel Maddow, nor Jake Tapper. Here's Jake Tapper interviewing Secretary of State Antony Blinken, suggesting that Musk needs to pay a price for this.
CEO Elon Musk has recently confirmed a SpaceX CEO Elon Musk has recently confirmed a report that's in Walter Isaacson's new biography of Musk that last year Musk blocked access to his Starlink satellite network in Crimea in order to disrupt a major Ukrainian attack on the Russian Navy there. In other words, Musk effectively sabotaged a military operation by Ukraine, a U.S. ally, against Russia, an aggressor country that invaded a U.S. ally. Should there be repercussions for that?
Yeah, he should have a bag thrown over his head, and he should wake up in Guantanamo Bay being force-fed a protein shake through his ass by Meatball Ron DeSantis. That's the price he should pay, I guess. That would be a fitting punishment. Notice the Orwellian speak there. Notice the very subtle propaganda, very subtle dishonesty on his part. He effectively sabotaged a Ukrainian attack. Effectively sabotaged. Didn't actively sabotage it. Because actively sabotage it would meant that he disabled an existing system that they were already relying on to execute this attack against the Russian Navy. That's not what he did. He simply refused to expand the service to Crimea because Crimea was a red line. But Jake Tapper didn't tell you that. He couched it so that he can't technically be accused of lying. He said they effectively sabotaged Ukraine. Let's hear what Blinken has to say. I'm not going to watch this whole thing. It's about 3 minutes, but we'll hear the response.
Jake, I can't speak to a specific episode. Here's what I can tell you. Starlink has been a vital tool for the Ukrainians to be able to communicate with each other, and particularly for the military to communicate in their effort to defend all of Ukraine's territory. It remains so, and I would expect it to continue to be critical to their efforts. So what we would hope and expect is that that technology will remain fully available to the Ukrainians. It is vital to what they're doing.
Okay, so you see how he has to be diplomatic in his response. And it's certainly not like the Biden administration to have kind words for Elon, but they have to be careful because, as Blinken said, Ukraine is currently relying on Starlink and on SpaceX, which means they are relying on Elon Musk. And if Elon Musk has proved himself to be one thing, it is an erratic and impulsive asshole. And so they push him too far, he could actually disable it. And they probably don't want him to do that. So you saw Blinken there being far more diplomatic than Jake Tapper, who wants consequences for Elon Musk for not obeying the order, right, or complying with the wishes, with the directives of the Ukrainian fighting forces. And so just a fascinating episode there of certain elements of the military-industrial complex having gone rogue. But like I said, Elon has fuck you money, right? I mean, this is why you don't do business with a guy like that when you need someone who's going to cooperate. Pardon me. You do business with people who are, wealthy, but not top 5 in the world wealthy, right? You need people who are going to feel like they have to stay on your good side to keep the money coming in because they need the money. Elon doesn't need the money. He didn't want the money. He started out donating the services. At one point, he said he was going to have to start being paid, but then he backed off of that and said, all right, you know what? You can have it for free. And so, interesting episode there, folks. Let's take some more. Good. See, now without Russell, I don't have any natural segues. I just have to be like, well, interesting story there. No, am I wrong? Extra bullet, thanks for the $2. Is Peter Daou the new Juan Guaido? Morning campers. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's a good one. By the way, Extra Bulla will be co-hosting on Sunday night at 7 p.m. because Russell is going to the opera that night. And so, he will not be able to sleep before the show. So if he were to do the show, he'd be up for a full 24 hours. So Russell will not be on the show on Sunday. Extra Bulla, my friend, will be co-hosting. He co-hosted before a while back. It was a lot of fun. And so we're really looking forward to having Bulla back here co-hosting the show. Russell will then be back on Wednesday the 20th. I'm looking at the calendar now. Russell will be back for that show on Wednesday night. And then Friday morning, because Russell's not doing the morning shows while he's away, Friday the 22nd, Danny Haifong, the great Danny Haifong, will be co-hosting with me that morning, Friday, September 22nd. So that's the calendar of events coming soon. So looking forward to all that. Eric Cousseau, thanks for the $5. West needs to make Nico House campaign manager. Getting Nico experience helps our movement a chance to make our own leaders. Yeah, look, that's a good point. And I know there are going to be people who are saying, well, Nico House doesn't have experience. You need instinct. You need instinct more than experience. I think Nico has good instincts. I think Jimmy has good instincts. I think Nick Brana has good political instincts. Doesn't have the leadership qualities, obviously, to put it mildly. To put it perhaps offensively mildly. But he has good instincts. This move demonstrates a complete lack of instincts. And that's why it's such a bad move. The People Infinite, thanks to the $2. Yes, Sabby is interviewing him. Wow. When? I got to watch that. Damn. That's must-see TV. Interesting. I did not know that. Like I said, Family Matters have been a little out of the loop this past week. Or West Cheney 2024. Yeah, exactly. That's the anti-fascist coalition, right? West Cheney. Joyce, thank you, Joyce. We appreciate the donations. Very kind of you. Jank of TYT was recently on Michael Malice. Just a note to put in your folder to listen to. All right, I got a lot of stuff to catch up on. Thank you for the heads up on that, Joyce. Appreciate it. Okay, beautiful. Here we go. Black Freud, thanks for the $1.99. Appreciate that, my friend. Trojan Horse Jill and Clueless Dr. Kanye Dow. Ow. Yeah, there you go. Thank you for the donation, my friend. Appreciate that, folks. Please hit that like button if you're in here. Please hit that subscribe button if you're in here. Hit that follow button over on Rumble if you're watching this over on Rumble. It's very important that you follow us and keep in touch with us wherever you find us. Jake, I see one from Taddy Mason. Besides that, are we all caught up on the Rumble rants? I'm going to take that for now. Don't worry, still got plenty of show left, so we'll get to everybody. Taddy Mason, thanks for the $2. Employees exist because employers either can't or don't want to do those jobs themselves. So negotiate with your employees or do the work yourself, employers. Indeed. Indeed. Jake says all set. Thank you, bud. Appreciate it. Janice Anderson, thanks for the $9.99. RE the recounts. Republicans sued to stop 2. Democrats backed the Republican suit. Only Pennsylvania completed. Result green lawsuit regarding proven election fraud. PA only paper ballots now. And auto recounts. Okay, so then you're saying that there were some gains made from those. Interesting. All right. Well, then in that case, I guess I will somewhat retract what I said. But it seemed awfully suspicious at the time. But thank you for that. I appreciate that. I did not know that. So thank you. All righty. Let's move on here. We have 2 more segments that we want to do today. I could cut the show a little short and just do one more, but we've missed a few days, and so I want to make up for lost time. So I want to do 2 more. And then we have a patron caller on the line. Just don't worry, I'll get to you before we hang up, my friend. Let's go to this story because, okay, so this is a story where Due Dissidence was far ahead of the curve. And I mean far, 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 far ahead of the curve. Not only did I mention this on a stream that I did with, it was Tusker and Colin Radix Carter, who co-hosted when Russell was on his last vacation, his previous vacation, right? I have to keep track of all these vacations that Russell takes. But the last time Russell missed time because he was on vacation. We co-hosted a show with Tusker and Colin where we talked about Starbucks union busting and the need for a boycott. And then Russell Dobular decided, since he used to drink the Starbucks French roast at home, that he would do his part to boycott Starbucks by creating a boycott Starbucks dissident sweepstakes where you, all our lovely audience in the chat, recommended him alternate coffee brands. And so we had that, and that went well. And now Russell is on San Francisco Bay Coffee, not Starbucks. Although when he gets back from Italy, he's not going to be able to drink the San Francisco Bay stuff either because he's having great coffee over there now. So that's one of the things. He's going to have to do another coffee drive to find something that comes close to the quality of coffee he's drinking over in Italy now. All right. So anyway, we've been talking about a Starbucks boycott for a long time. And now here's a headline. Finally, in The Guardian, calls for Starbucks boycott grow amid aggressive union busting activities. Calls for a consumer boycott of Starbucks are growing amid mounting criticisms of the coffee chain's aggressive union busting activities. A boycott, supporters say, would aim to use consumer power to pressure Starbucks to stop its union busting and illegal actions and to finally negotiate its first union contract. The Baristas Union, Starbucks Workers United, is having internal discussions about when and whether to mount a boycott. At the moment, in addition to organizing stores, it is focused on increasing consumer support. Calls for a Starbucks boycott increased after Cornell University, facing intense student pressure, announced in August that it would kick the company off campus by no longer serving Starbucks in its dining halls. That came after students occupied Cornell's main administrative building and after Starbucks closed all 3 of its stores in Ithaca, New York. All 3 were unionized, making Ithaca the first American city where every Starbucks was unionized. So what did I say in the previous segment with Tim Gurner? I said all these gains around the margins, whether it's at the NLRB or with union efforts like Starbucks, at a certain point, the ultimate showdown between labor and capital is coming no matter what, because as you see here, how does Starbucks react to the fact that all 3 shops in town are union shops? They close the shops. All right? They're not allowed to do that, apparently, but go get your fucking shine box when you got Starbucks money, right? When we heard that Starbucks was closing all the stores, we asked, what can we do, said Nick Wilson, a Cornell sophomore and leader of the effort to oust Starbucks. We thought if Starbucks is going to get out of Ithaca, we should get them all the way out. They shouldn't be profiting off our campus and our community. Amen. Wilson said students from nearly 30 colleges had contacted him about launching efforts to kick Starbucks off their campuses. If the Starbucks union launches a consumer boycott, Wilson said, young people would certainly be in favor. Young people's support for unions is second nature at this point. Students at the University of Washington and across the University of California system have also called for ousting Starbucks from campus. Starbucks union members say they know of such efforts at a dozen other campuses. More than 350 Starbucks have been unionized. This is later on in the article. The first one's 21 months ago, but Starbucks hasn't reached a contract with even one of them. They have not ratified a contract, yes, with a single union shop. The U.S. labor law watchdog, the National Labor Relations Board, has filed 100 complaints against Starbucks, an extraordinarily high number that accuse it of more than 1,000 illegal actions, including illegally firing dozens of pro-union baristas, closing recently unionized stores, and not bargaining in good faith. Pardon me. Asked to comment about a possible boycott, Starbucks officials declined, but they insisted that the company was bargaining in good faith. Quote, Starbucks has approached bargaining with the consistency and an earnest desire to progress negotiations for partners at every single store represented by a union, said Mae Jensen, Starbucks Senior Vice President of Partner Resources. Starbucks calls its workers partners. Yeah. Jensen repeated Starbucks' assertion that the union had not made any effort to bargain for more than 250 stores, although the NLRB has repeatedly accused Starbucks, not the union, of refusing to bargain. Well, obviously, why join a union if you're going to refuse to bargain? Makes no sense on the face of it. It's just totally absurd. But it's good to see that the boycott effort is at least starting to get underway because, look, if we could afford to, we would call for Amazon boycotts, right? But if we're being really honest here, Amazon has us by the balls. It's really difficult for working class people to boycott Amazon because you get stuff so much cheaper at Amazon than you can anywhere else. I had to replace these mic cables. Can I show them to you? See? These are some mic cables that I got. I got 4 of these through Amazon for $7. If I went to the store, they would be $15 for one of them, and it would be the wrong color. I needed it to be black. I don't know if you noticed, but now I hold the mic closer to my mouth so I'm not hunched over, and my previous mic cable was white, and it looked awkward, so I needed black cables. So at Amazon, you get 4 black cables for $7. You can't afford to do it any other way, right? Coffee, we can all drink other coffee, right? Like Starbucks does not have a monopoly on coffee, and Starbucks is some of the least affordable coffee on the market. So that's why I have here, and this is actually a coincidence because we ran out of coffee in my house because I've been running around all week. I have my Dunkin' Donuts coffee this morning. Ran out before the show and had to grab it. But Starbucks is a company that we can all afford to boycott. It can be easily done. There's coffee everywhere. You can make coffee at home. There's Dunkin' Donuts. There's Tim Hortons. There's McDonald's has pretty good coffee if you want to, or, if you want to go to the, organic fair trade co-op, if you live in Brooklyn or something, go there, buy that coffee. There's no reason why we have to buy Starbucks coffee. So a Starbucks boycott makes total sense. And we should all be doing it. We should all be encouraging it because clearly the union drives are not enough since the unions aren't getting contracts. And Starbucks, apparently, according to this article here, can violate 1,000 labor laws or 1,000 violations of existing labor laws. I don't see anybody paying a price for it. What do I see? I see articles written in outlets like this about how they ought not do it. I think we can do a little better than that, if the right wing can boycott Target because of the dick-tucking pajamas or whatever the fuck it is, then I think we can boycott Starbucks for their anti-union practices, right? So I think we should get on that, and I was very encouraged to see that because it's something like, hey, we thought of that a while ago. Good to see the message catching on. All right, let's take a couple more super chats, and then we got one more segment to do. Breaking. Dr. West to hire Debbie Wasserman Schultz as political advisor. Yeah. That's what Jimmy said, right? May as well hire Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Pete Sweet, thanks for the $5. West has a choice. Pick up the torch Bernie dropped. An economic revolution uniting workers or die on the righteous hill against racism and white supremacy. So we never actually got deep in the weeds of that. What I would say about that is, look, and this was more or less what Jimmy was saying. He's like, look, I would never tell a black activist not to talk about white supremacy. The difference is when you are messaging a presidential campaign, It is important to distinguish yourself from the establishment party. And the way it plays when in your elevator pitch, because you need an elevator pitch. That's what Pasta said when they were talking about it. When you're messaging a campaign, you need an elevator pitch, meaning a short, sweet, succinct soundbite that you communicate to potential voters that distinguish you from everyone else, especially if you're running as this outsider anti-establishment candidate, right? So what made Bernie's first campaign in 2016 so powerful, the reason why this unknown senator from Vermont catapulted from, 15 people on lawn chairs to filling stadiums all around the country, is because when I told people who were, just average people, and by average people, I do not mean average white people. I mean average people across the board, right? From all different races, orientations, genders, whatever. The average person is just that, an average person. They are not particularly interested in politics. They follow it kind of when they have to. They're fairly disillusioned with both major parties. And what made Bernie so powerful and what made him so popular amongst those voters, which is why they came out in droves and carried him to these very impressive victories in states that are hardly democratic socialist states, right? I mean, he wins fucking Wyoming. He wins, Minnesota, South Dakota, North Dakota. I forget. Maybe Clinton won there. But, all these states in, middle America that you wouldn't expect a democratic socialist Brooklyn Jew to win is because his elevator pitch to the average voter distinguished him from Hillary Clinton and every other Democrat that they've heard talking for the past number of decades. You say, hey, I know you're cynical about politics. I know you think Democrats and Republicans are all corrupt, they're all crooks, they're all the same, blah, blah, blah. I hear you. Check out this Bernie Sanders guy. I think you'll like what he has to say. They check out Bernie Sanders. Within 30 seconds, they're hearing healthcare. They're hearing wages. They're hearing college tuition. They're hearing debt cancellation. They're hearing something different immediately. Immediately. And that immediately piques their curiosity. That's what made his campaign powerful. That's what brought in a lot of independents and disaffected former voters, non-voters, first-time voters, right? Whatever. If you're Cornel West and I tell you, hey, go check out Cornel West, I think you'll like what you hear. And within 30 seconds, he's on a tear about white supremacy, homophobia, male supremacy, transphobia. People think, okay, well, what's so different from him? What makes this guy stand out? This is how I hear Democrats talk all the time. So why should I be especially interested in him as opposed to a progressive Democrat like an Elizabeth Warren or a Jamie Raskin or a Jamal Bowman or an AOC, right? There's nothing that sets him apart there. That's that criticism. And I think that is a valid criticism. That is not to say that you can't talk about racism and white supremacy as if they don't exist. No, that's not the point of that. That's not the point of that whatsoever. The point of that is when you're running for office and you're running an anti-establishment campaign and you have to broaden your coalition to include people who are disillusioned by the system, you have to stand out immediately. Immediately. You only have a minute. This is not a Princeton lecture hall where you have 45 minutes to flesh out your views. You have a minute to get people's attention, and if you lose them, they're gone. So that's what I would say to that. All right. But thank you for raising that because it's something that we were going to talk about. Russell and I were going to talk about this in detail on Wednesday, but we had to cancel Wednesday because my kid was sick. So thank you for that. All right. Jake, we're all set on the Rumble rants. All right. We're all set on the super chats here, right? That looks good. All right. Beautiful. So let's do one more segment. Then I got Kiwi on the line who's waiting to talk. And then we will get on with our Friday. All right, folks. So, all right. We did a segment on Bill Maher's Club Random podcast interview with Jim Gaffigan where he said that the writers were being kooky in their demands, the striking WGA members, kooky in a lot of their demands, and that he thought that they acted as though they were entitled to make a living as writers. So we kind of saw him sort of reveal his actual attitudes toward the striking writers. And now, not only is he scabbing and restarting Real Time with Bill Maher, which we'll get to in a moment, but Drew Barrymore is also scabbing here. So Drew Barrymore posted on Instagram, I made a choice to walk away from the MTV Film and Television Awards because I was the host and it had a direct conflict with what the strike was dealing with, which was studios, streamers, film, and television. It was also in the first week of the strike, and so I did what I thought was the appropriate thing at the time to stand in solidarity with the writers. And to be clear, our talk show actually wrapped on April 20th, so we never had to shut down the show. This is like 5th grade writing level, by the way. She's going to have a hell of a time without her writers because this is like literally a 5th grader wrote this. However, I am also making the choice to come back for the first time in this strike for our show that may have my name on it, but this is bigger than just me. Look at that sentence structure. She's going to do a show with no writers. However, I am also making the choice to come back for the first time in this strike for our show that may have my name on it, but this is bigger than just me. Literally, I mean, if a 5th grader wrote that, I would give him a C. I own this choice. We are in compliance with not discussing or promoting film and television that is struck of any kind. We launched live in a global pandemic. Our show was built for sensitive times. Yeah, people really turned to the Drew Barrymore. I didn't even know this fucking show existed. I didn't know she had a show. And has only functioned through what the real world is going through in real time. I want to be there to provide what writers do so well. I want to be there. Listen to this idiot. She cannot write. She can't write the post. She's going to run the show? I want to be there to provide what writers do so well, which is a way to bring us together or help us make sense of the human experience. I hope for a resolve for everyone as soon as possible. We have navigated difficult times since we first came on air, and so I take a step forward, to start season 4 once again with an astute humility. What a fucking ditz. She can't write. Come on, I'm not being mean. She's going to attempt the show with no writers? What monologue is she going to do on her show? She can barely talk. The Drew Barrymore show's WGA writers, fans, and our union allies held the picket line for 8+ hours outside of CVS. So this is the WGA East. So here they are picketing the return of her show, Scab That She Is, Drew's News Strikes, Drew's WGA crew. So I guess these are her writers that are actually striking. That's some bad blood. You might have a hard time winning them back. That's the thing that these people are not quite getting here is that once you cross this picket line, who's going to come back and work for you? Like, why would any of your writing staff return once you basically not only did you cross the picket line and jeopardize the effectiveness of their strike, but you're really disrespecting them in the ultimate way, being like, well, yeah, we can do the show without you. We don't need you, right? Do you like breaking strikes? There's a little coffee stand that they set up to support the striking writers outside of the CBS building. In addition to that, The Hollywood Reporter reports Drew Barrymore show audience members say they were kicked out for Writers Guild support amid picket. The Writers Guild of America members and scribes for the Drew Barrymore show picketed outside CBS studios in New York on Monday as the daytime talker resumed filming amid the writers and actors strikes. 2 audience members who had signed up for free tickets to the taping were handed WGA pins by picketers as they walked in the door and say they were asked to leave before the show began because they were wearing the pins. Dominic Turasek and Cassidy Carter, 2 New York City-based students, plan to attend the show after signing up free tickets about a week and a half ago, not aware that the strike was going on. As they walked into the building Monday, both were handed buttons from the picketers that read Writers Guild on strike. The 2 say they were asked to take off the buttons at security, to which Carter complied. Turasek was still wearing his button as they entered the studio space. He said a crew member spotted the button and asked them both to leave. These are the anti-fascists, by the way. This is liberal Hollywood standing up against the fascism of Donald Trump. You can't wear a button supporting the striking writers in the audience, not on the show. In the audience, what are the odds that any of the talent or crew of the show would even notice one of those buttons? Very, very small. They weren't allowed to wear them anyway. All right, now we get to Bill Maher. Real time is coming back. Unfortunately, sans writers or writing. So Bill Maher, also a scab here. It has been 5 months, and it's time to bring people back to work. The writers have important issues that I sympathize with and hope they are addressed to their satisfaction. But they are not the only people with issues, problems, and concerns. Despite some assistance from me, much of the staff is struggling mightily. Okay, so why don't you give them some more fucking assistance? I mean, you're worth a lot of money. It seems like there's a way to solve this without crossing the picket line. We just give them some more money if they're struggling mightily. We all were hopeful, or actually, now that I think of it, I didn't even think of this when I was doing this prep. You know, as nauseating as those 5 douchebags are, Fallon, Colbert, John Oliver, Seth Meyers, and whoever the other one is, Jimmy Kimmel, as bad as they are doing a podcast and donating the proceeds of the podcast to the crews of the show. So Bill Maher has a podcast. He has his Club Random podcast. That does pretty well. Gets a lot of traffic on YouTube, so he's got to be raking in some decent YouTube ad money. He has sponsors where he does ad reads during the show. Gets a lot of downloads on the podcast platforms, I'd imagine. And so it looks like he has plenty of money coming in through his podcast. And so in addition to the very, very large net worth of Bill Maher to begin with, he's got money coming in now. So why not do what the late night comics did and donate that money to the crew who's out of work now? No, instead, we're going to cross the picket line and restart our stupid, fucking irrelevant bullshit show. We all were hopeful, he said, this would come to an end after Labor Day, but that day has come and gone, and there still seems to be nothing happening. Pardon me. I love my writers. I am one of them. I'm just much richer than all of them combined. but I'm not prepared to lose an entire year and see so many below-the-line people suffer so much. Oh, what a caring guy. What a compassionate guy. I will honor the spirit of the strike by not doing a monologue, desk piece, new rules, or editorial, the written pieces that I am so proud of, on real time. Okay, so he's not going to do the stand-up set at the beginning. He's not going to do the mid-show monologue, which is either like a parody piece or something else. The new rules or the editorial, the like long-form monologue at the end. And I'll say it up front to the audience. The show I will be doing without my writers will not be as good as our normal show, full stop. But the heart of the show is an off-the-cuff panel discussion that aims to cut through the bullshit and predictable partisanship, and that will continue. The show will not disappoint. Well, at this point, it seems like the show is just a roundtable discussion, an unscripted political talk show, which he already has in the form of his Club Random podcast. So why wouldn't he just bring his real-time guests into his basement and do a podcast with them? That would actually be a good show, because the people who he has on the podcast are kind of interesting. The people who he has on real time are kind of boring. So I would actually tune in to a Club Random podcast where he would have, like, I don't know, Bill Kristol and David Frum go in his basement and get shit-faced and confess to their crimes. Like, that would actually be interesting. I would actually watch that. No, we have to do this whole thing where we bring people into a studio and sit around the table so that the camera guys can work and the sound guys can work and the front of house staff can work, right? When you could just pay them anyway and maintain solidarity with the writers. But no, we're going to put on this whole show with these boring people doing boring commentary. Take out the stand-up, take out the editorials, take out the little parody bits, take out everything that used to set the show apart in an interesting way. It really doesn't anymore. The show's been unwatchable for a while. But no, we're not going to do any of that. Rather, we have to do all of that. We're not going to do the podcast. We have to bring people in to put on our HBO show, because HBO needs the money and I need to start getting paid again. And the writers, you know, I love them. I'm one of them. but they're costing me money and they're costing the crew money, even though I can afford to support the crew for as long as this strike goes on. Teamsters, Local 804, new rules, knobstick. Bill Maher trended along with SCAB on Twitter after he announced this. Thomas Moore, Bill Maher could support 20 families for a year with 1% of his income. Drew Barrymore could support 18 families for a year with 1% of her income. They don't need to start their show again to support the IATSE, which is the stagehand union. Absolutely true. The Writers Guild of America West. So this is the West Coast branch because the Drew Barrymore show tapes in New York. Bill Maher obviously tapes in L.A. Bill Maher's decision to go back on the air while his guild is on strike is disappointing. If he goes forward with this plan, he needs to honor more than the spirit of the strike. As a WGA member, Bill Maher is obligated to follow the strike rules and not perform any writing services. Now, that's very difficult to enforce because you can't get inside his head and know that he's not, coming up with any lines or monologues that he will repeat in a quote-unquote off-the-cuff presentation on the show. But the spirit of what he's saying is true. It is difficult to imagine how real-timers can go forward without a violation of WGA strike rules taking place, and so the WGA will be picketing this show. So, Bill Maher, is basically just a cranky old man now. Between the interview with Marianne Williamson, where he pulled off the very difficult feat of making her look in touch with the needs of poor and working people by comparison, saying, well, I don't see too much pain out there in America. And she says, well, have you been to Skid Row? Well, no, obviously. Why would I go to Skid Row, right? Between him telling Jim Gaffigan that the writers' demands are kooky and that they feel they're entitled to a living, as if professional unionized writers who provide material to highly profitable films and TV shows are not owed a living. Like, we're not talking about your cousin who just graduated from Tisch Film School who has a script that he thinks is dynamite, and isn't it unfair that the rest of the world doesn't like it? That's not what we're talking about. Those aren't the writers who are on strike. The writers who are on strike are professional writers according to the standards set by the industry. That's why they're in the union in the first place. And so professional writers writing at that level for shows as profitable as they are, yes, they are owed a living. Yes, in that situation, they are. And now this, actually crossing the picket line, right? Next time Bill Maher tries to cosplay as some sort of progressive, which he hasn't even tried to do in a number of years, he made vague gestures in support of the Bernie campaign in 2016. But since then, he's been a centrist Democrat, if not actually further right than that even. And so, Bill Maher, Drew Barrymore, scabbing it up on both sides of the country. And it really begs the question, how big are these people's egos? All you have to do is sit on your ass and wait for this to resolve itself. That's all you have to do. All you have to do is hang out in your penthouse apartment or your LA mansion, Malibu, Beverly Hills, wherever the fuck you live, and just wait it out. That's all it takes. But what, they can't resist being in front of a camera? The urge to inject yourself into the lives of your audience members is so powerful that now you're going to cross the picket line? What the hell does Drew Barrymore need to do the show for? What does Bill Maher need to do the show for? He has a podcast going already where he, whatever. If you feel a need to get your message out or whatever the hell you do on the Club Random podcast, you just do it. What is the need for this? They're just giant ego monsters. And now they are setting precedents that they're not going to be able to live down. All right. People are not going to forget this. I hope the writers don't forget this. I hope the writers don't come back to these shows. Why would you? Why would your writing staff return? So let's say the writers for Bill Maher's show get a, amicable deal, right, from whatever studios they are sparring with. Why would you go back and write for a boss that crossed the picket line? I hope they don't. All right. let's go to a Rumble rant. Bonzo Beans, is CW unaware of populist cultural trends getting co-opted by money and power? 80s hip-hop versus 2000s hip-hop. People recoil when they sniff out power instrumentalizing their own culture. Nico House and Pasta did a great talk on the Cornel West campaign, which I listened to in the car over the past couple days. It's only about 45 minutes. But Nico put it very, very well. He said that Cornel shows a lack of political awareness. That was the word he used, awareness. And that's the exact right word. He seems uninterested and unaware of the developments of his own campaign. He just seems completely indifferent to it. He seems like he's not involved in it. Like he's not invested in it. That he's just letting the machine run itself behind his back. And that he's not involved in any of these hiring moves, any of the personnel moves, any of the messaging. That's the way it looks. And so I thought that was a great point that Nico made, and I encourage you all to check out that conversation. All right, we'll take some more super chats in a moment. Hey, Kiwi over there. Kiwi is a patron supporter. Do you want to talk? If you want to talk, unmute your microphone, and I will admit you, so you can say hello, and maybe I'll give my vocal cords a rest for a minute. Kiwi is a Patreon supporter, and Patreon supporters get call-in access to this show. That's one of the perks, and so thank you for calling in, my friend. How's it going?
Hey, can you hear me all right?
I can hear you great.
All right, great. First off, I want to say, tough break about your kid. I hope he's doing all right.
Excuse me. Oh, man. It is not easy doing a show on your own. I did not consider the vocal cord strain. That's the one thing I did not account for when I said, fuck, I'll do 2 hours by myself. But yes, thank you. He is doing better. Like I said in my original tweet post, and I put this out to the Substackers and the patrons, it's a rare but treatable condition. It was treatable through medication, so it's not like a chronic thing. And they treated it, and thank God the treatment was successful, and so he's home. But thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So I just had two things to say. One on one of the segments, and one on something I completely understand why you didn't cover. I assume you probably didn't have enough time to look at it. So The first one is the Elon Musk Starlink story. Do you find it as ironic as I do that the same people that before Elon bought Twitter, the common refrain to any kind of censorship was, well, they're a private company, they can do what they want.
Absolutely. Good point. Yep. I thought of that too.
Because that's the consequence of privatizing and outsourcing the military-industrial complex.
Yep, 100%. Oh, it's a great point. And actually, I meant to make that point in the segment. I'm pissed that I didn't. But because I did think of that. That all of a sudden, hey, it's a private company. He can do what he wants.
Right. I mean, not that I necessarily agree with that in principle. I think in this case, it was probably a pretty prudent decision, in my opinion. But,
right.
I mean, this is what you get.
The other irony of the Elon thing, which I didn't mention in the segment either, is that Rachel Maddow, in that very monologue, I couldn't find the entire monologue to clip, and I didn't want to play the whole thing. But in the run-up to that point that she made there, she mentions how Elon Musk is enabling anti-Semitism and Nazism on his platform. But she's pissed. She's pissed that he didn't help the Nazi battalion take the Crimea. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's another irony that I meant to put in there, but didn't. That's another thing. When you do them solo, you don't have time to think about your next point because there's no person to pass to.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another sore spot for me in the media coverage on Ukraine. I mean, there's no acknowledgement or even even while still supporting it, they could wrestle with that. But the fact that they choose not to pisses me off. But I digress. So the other thing I wanted to get to, which considering your circumstances over the past week, I can understand why you didn't have time to look at it. But the Hunter Biden indictment.
Yeah, that broke. What was that, yesterday?
Yeah, mid-afternoon yesterday.
Yeah, by then I already had a full slate of stuff that I really wanted to do, but we'll do that Sunday for sure. So, Bulla, that's your homework for Sunday. Read up on that.
I mean, I could wait till Sunday to give my take on it.
No, it's okay. You can give your take. I mean, I kind of vaguely, I mean, the take that seems to be prominent in our circles, and I haven't really looked into it yet, is that they're doing this to sort of convince people that he's not getting preferential treatment when really he is, because they're picking a charge that does not reflect on his father when there are a lot of charges that could.
Right.
That's what I've been hearing. Again, I
Well,
can't stand by that because I really have not looked into it at all, but that's what I'm hearing. That's what's the word on the street, as they say.
That's more or less accurate. So to just give my little spiel on it.
Sure.
It's a number of charges that were in the original indictment that he was getting the sweetheart deal with. And it mostly relates, well, no, actually entirely relates to the gun charge. Now, it's various like little subsections and codes about, I mean, it boils down to he lied on an ATF form to get a firearm. And then some other related ephemera to that.
I mean, who among us hasn't?
Well, no, that's the thing. So people are saying that it is kind of a bullshit charge. And in the WAPO piece that I was reading, his lawyers actually said, this is usually a charge that they tack on to other bigger crimes to intimidate a defendant into taking a plea deal. It's not generally charged on its own.
Got it.
So I looked into the statute. I mean, it's nothing to sneeze at. Like, if he's convicted on it, and he's pretty much dead to rights on it, he faces up to 25 years. But I mean, that is assuming that he doesn't get another plea deal. That's one part of it. The other part of it is that, yeah, you're completely correct. Like, suspiciously, none of the tax charges have been indicted upon. Now, that's not to say that they won't further down the line, but it just seems odd to me that that's excluded, but something, relatively lesser and with relatively smaller implications is occluded,
Right. Sure.
So I agree with the tape that you've heard on the street, that this feels kind of like a way for Democrats to wave it off, say, Hunter had his day in court after all this is done, whether or not he goes to jail or whatever. It's been my pet theory for a while that they're basically willing to just throw Hunter under the bus to get this all done with.
Perhaps maybe if they can get him locked up in time for Joe Biden to pardon him while he's still president, that could be a strategy too.
Right.
Yeah, that could be something for sure. Something just happened with our Rumble stream. Now it says it's reconnected. I don't know what the hell that was. It cut out, and now apparently it's back, according to... I don't know what happened. Is it back? Are we live on Rumble now? I just got something in my StreamYard that said it cut out, and now it says it's reconnected. Jake, do you know what's going on with that? It's back. Okay, thank you, Jake. Beautiful. Awesome. All right, great. See, Jake saving the day. Round of applause for Jake for saving the Rumble stream, because I don't know what the hell happened there. But Kiwi, thank you for calling in. I will look into that more, but we will definitely, no question about it, be covering that on Sunday.
All right, great. Well, have a good one, Keaton.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your support. Thanks for listening. Thanks for calling. All righty. Let's take a couple more super chats. We got a Rumble rant over here. From Bonzo Beans. Is that what? Oh, no. I'm sorry. That just showed up on my Rumble app because I was checking the stream. We got to that one already. But thank you, Bonzo Beans. Lawrence, fine. I get a free Dunkin' Donuts coffee every day because I'm over 55. Is that true? Do they give free coffee if you're over 55? I'm surprised Russell doesn't drink Dunkin' Donuts. Haha. I think Russell's 54. I'll have to let him know. One more year, and that could be your hangout. These bitches want Nikes. Thanks for the $5. My instinct is to support the writers because they're workers. However, the good majority of these people write woke nonsense in shit scripts. Yeah, I feel the same way emotionally. Like, I understand the impulse to just taunt them for their misfortune. Like, I do understand that impulse. But, look, I mean, ultimately, my goal here is to make shit libs like the average WGA member sort of politically defeated and politically irrelevant. My goal is not to starve them. So like they still should be paid for their work, right? I mean, I can't go that far as to say, well, literally just eat shit in the gutter. I still think, yeah, I mean, they still need to be paid decently. And actors, I know people say all the time, and Russell says this all the time because Russell came from the theater. See, the thing about when you come from the theater the way Russell did, all right, and I don't know if you're still watching, all right? Or I don't know if you're still watching or if you're halfway down a bucket of mussels or whatever the hell you're eating over there. But Russell's experience with actors comes from being in a theater background. So like the actors in the theater are actual actors, right? And you'll see where I'm going with this, right? When you are cast in a play, you are an actor in a play. Even if you're in the chorus of a musical, right? You're an integral part of the play where for a certain period of time, you are front and center in the action. A lot of Screen Actors Guild members are background actors or featured background actors. So like a featured background actor would be like if you play a bellhop at a hotel and they show you putting the suitcase down in front of, you know, the movie star who picks it up, right, or whatever, or a waiter or a waitress, right? There are people who make their living doing that. There are people who make their living as stand-ins, who kind of stand in place of the principal actors when the, you know, DP and the lighting crew is setting up the lights for the shots. And then there are extras, literally just people who hang out on a set for 14, 16 hours a day, working in the background. I have known a ton of these guys. And it's not to say they're not real actors, because a lot of them pursue acting as a serious craft, but they don't make their living, you know, reciting dialogue on camera. They're not these ego monsters that a lot of people associate actors as being, right? They're very, very blue collar. A lot of the background actors I know are just blue collar guys, you know, take the train in the morning, take the train home at night. They have very blue collar sensibilities about them. They're not libs. A lot of the background actors are not libs, and that constitutes a huge percentage of actors in the industry who are on strike now. And so, in that sense, I think it is important. Well, you know, whether you like them or not, as Russell said, their adversaries are even worse. Their adversaries are basically the showbiz versions of this guy. Right? I mean, that's basically who they're up against. And so it's not a close call whose side I'm on, despite my personal reservations about a lot of them as individuals. Apocalyptic Optimist, thanks to the 1999. F the writers. They were offered just about everything, pay raise, AI withdrawal, and more. They didn't like the fact that they want more writers than what was needed, plus no sympathy for people making $11,000 to $14,000 a week. I have to look into those terms. I'm sure some of them get paid that well, but I know a vast majority don't. I mean, I know people who have written for TV shows, and if they were paying that well, they wouldn't be working as movers and Uber drivers in the spare time. So yes, I mean, fuck a certain amount of them, right? I mean, like I said, like the last comment said, you know, I'm not saying these are the most sympathetic lot. But there are a lot of people working on the lower levels of this industry that are exploited, much in the same way that a lot of other workers are. And so I think, you know, it's important that they get a deal as they can. And the other thing that, you know, the Bill Mahers and the Drew Barrymores don't want to grapple with, and this is something that's been true for a long time, it's just how unbelievably overpaid so many of these above the line so-called talent are in the industry. I think it was on the movie Black Swan, where they got in trouble for having unpaid interns on the set, or they got called out for having unpaid interns on the set. Because I've worked on films where I've been unpaid interns. I've only ever been an unpaid intern on a actual like film with a budget. But, you know, you work as an unpaid intern on a film, there's usually not a bona fide star getting paid millions of dollars to act in that film. With Black Swan, you had Natalie Portman get paid $5 million for that film. And you had interns running around getting nothing for, you know, 14, 16-hour days work, 5 in a row. Even if you paid those interns a $50 stipend per day, even if you gave them something, you could easily afford to give every intern $100 a day if you cut Natalie Portman's salary for the film from $5 million to $4.99 million. If you take 10 grand out of her salary, that would pay for the interns. Won't do it. It's an obscenely unequal industry. It always has been. And guys like Bill Maher and Drew Barrymore have been the beneficiaries of that for decades. And that they would go as far as to cross a picket line. Now that people on the lower end of that industry are starting to demand more, that's a scumbag move. It's a scumbag move, whatever you think of the writers or the actors. Leprechaun Alley. Thanks for the 1999. Appreciate it. Regarding Jill Stein from earlier in the show, I'm worried about her operating like a Sarah Palin. Just not good judgment, although Peter Daou is the one who raises eyebrows. Hey, Rumble's giving us another problem. I don't know if you fixed that the first time, Jake, or if you could try to fix that now. But we're going to be off in a few minutes, but that's unfortunate. Sorry, Leprechaun Alley. I owe you my full attention for that super chat. Regarding Jill Stein from earlier in the show, I'm worried about her operating like a Palin. Just not good judgment, although Peter Daou is the one who raises eyebrows. Yeah, I mean, look, I think that's right. But what I would also say is that, Jill Stein's lack of judgment raises major eyebrows because ultimately it's about, can I tell people to invest in the campaign? If I'm going to tell people to invest in the campaign, I have a responsibility to feel confident that that investment of time or money, whatever their investment is, that they are in good hands with that campaign, that their investment is in good hands. And whether Peter Daou is sincere in his evolution or not is really the secondary issue. The main issue is I don't feel confident in a team that found this guy and thought, yes, this is the guy we're going to put at number one behind the candidate himself, obviously. Do I feel confident in their ability to put people's investment in time or resources or money to good use? And the answer at this point, I'm sorry, if I'm being honest, and I have to be honest, is no. And I hate to say it. I hate to say it because I am a great admirer of Cornel West. And I was very excited about the political potential, of the campaign. And I still wish the campaign well. I really do. All right, let's take, and thank you for that donation, Leprechaun Alley. And thank you, Yasim Miller. Hi, Keaton. Hi, Yasim. Thank you for the donation. That's very kind of you. As a naturalized citizen who's been in the U.S. for 30 years, I'm still learning the language and appreciate very much the vocabulary used in programs like yours. It has been a great pleasure to watch you guys. Well, thank you. Do you appreciate the vocabulary because it is heightened and enlightened? Or do you appreciate the vocabulary because it is dumbed down enough for someone who's learning English as a second language to understand? Is it that we're not sophisticated, that we don't use big words and it's easier for you to get? Or do we broaden your understanding of the language by using very highbrow, sophisticated vocabulary? I honestly don't know which is which. I'm not really conscious of my vocabulary choice. I don't know. But either way, thank you for your support. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe you became a patron recently. And thank you very much for that, because Patreon members and paid Substack subscribers are once again the backbone of the show. They are what make this possible. So please, folks, if you can, go to patreon.com/DoDissidents and join the show. You get 2 bonus streams per month, the first of which for September we will be scheduling very, very soon. You get your name up in lights in the credits here and call-in access. So you can call and say hello and give us a piece of your mind the way Kiwi did earlier. Thank you guys very much for being here. You have been a great audience. I appreciate you all very much. We will be back with Extra Bulla Sunday night, 7 p.m. Back with Russell Dobular the 20th, Wednesday at 8 p.m. And then this time, next week, same time, with Danny Haifong, Friday at 9 a.m. That's our upcoming schedule, our upcoming calendar. Thank you, Jake, in the booth, for helping me out. It was really, really appreciate that since I was solo for the second half of the show. Thank you very much to our great friend Misty Winston for coming on and sitting in for the first half. And thank you guys all very, very much for being here. We will see you soon, Sunday night, 7 p.m. Until then, Please be safe and be well.
Please clap.